Partnership Conference of 2020. So this morning we have some sessions on connecting communities to nature, about building capacity in the community, and those will continue until almost 3 o'clock this afternoon. So lots to talk about in these sessions. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. You can ask questions to any of our speakers through the live chat. That'll be picked up and we will put those to the speakers at the end of the 3 talks that we have now. You're welcome to ask any questions in Welsh as these will be translated, although unless our speakers are Welsh speaking, the answer will be in English, just to note. Further details of all the presentations and the speakers' biographies can be found on our Hoover webpage, so we won't spend too much time now going through those, but please feel free to check those over. And just to note that all of these sessions are being recorded and will be available afterwards through the WBP website. So without further ado then, I will hand over to our first speaker, who is Alison Boys, from the RSPB Living Levels Landscape Partnership. So over to you, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Yes, so I'm Alison Boys, Programme Manager for Living Levels. I'm pleased to have you here in my study to talk about our work. It's a very strange situation, but I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to dive straight in. I'm just going to briefly set out how I intend to structure this talk. And so I'm going to give you some brief background and overview of the landscape and the challenges that we're facing here before moving on to talk about some of the solutions that we're implementing and how they're working. It won't offer up a panacea, as some of the issues that we are dealing with in the landscape are extremely complex and also long term, and in many ways they're bigger than the institutions and the partnership that we have built. However, we're building a really solid foundation for future action in the landscape, and I'm keen to share some of our experiences with you today. I do find it very difficult squeezing in our huge programme into a 20-minute slot. I feel like I could talk for 20 minutes on any one of our 24 individual projects, but I will do my very best. So we are the Living Levels, which is a National Lottery Heritage Fund Landscape Partnership Scheme, a bit of a mouthful. So we're primarily funded by the Heritage Lottery, but we are also funded by others, including our partners. We've secured just under £4 million in funding for what is now a 4.5-year scheme, and we've had an extension to mitigate for the impact of COVID-19. So we started in February 2017 and we will end now in March 2022. So we are approaching the final third of our scheme, if I've done my maths right. I just wanted to give a tiny bit of background about the Landscape Partnership Scheme itself, as that's the underpinning framework that we hang our project off. So this funding is usually for a large area at a landscape scale, as the name suggests, and it's primarily targeted at protecting local heritage. It's often been the case, if you look around the UK at other landscape partnership schemes, that the fund has primarily targeted landscapes which are in some ways marginalised or degraded and are facing particularly tough challenges, which can only be overcome with the concerted effort of a broad range of partners working together for the long term to enact a vision. And that is very much the case for our landscape partnership, which is focused on the Gwent Levels in South East Wales. So delivering this partnership, we are 12 core partners led by RSPB Cymru, who employ me and my team of 7 other dedicated officers. I should have put a photo up of them here. They're a brilliant team, fantastic, dedicated, talented officers who actually deliver most of the work. I'm afraid I don't have a photo, but there's a lovely photo of them on our website, so I encourage you to go and have a look at that, and you can see then what roles they do. In reality, and it's a cliche to say it, but it is very true, there are a much greater number of informal partners, stakeholders and volunteers involved in delivering our scheme and contributing to it, and it really is crucial that they do get involved, because our success depends on a large participation. So let's focus in on the Gwent Levels. Here we are. This slide shows you where we are, some of our key sites. We roughly cover a 20-mile stretch from the River Rumney in Cardiff across the face of the Severn Estuary and over to Chepstow. For anybody not familiar with the Gwent Levels, they are those lands which have been reclaimed from the sea over thousands of years. picture to represent what they might have looked like in prehistoric times. They've been exploited by man since Mesolithic times, when nomadic tribes used to hunt the area and fish along the foreshore's edge during the drier summer months. In that period, the Gwent Levels was a wild wetland of salt marsh, muddy peat bogs and woodland, and this picture is a historical illustration we commissioned as part of a project to help people visualise some of the lost landscapes of the Gwent Levels. It's part of a bigger interpretation strategy, which I've barely got any time to talk about, but I wanted to use some of these lovely images as I talk to you very, very briefly about the history of the area. So the Romans were the first to build sea defences and drain the land, but their flood defences ultimately failed and the landscape was flooded again. So today's landscape is largely medieval in date. It was the monks of Tintern Abbey and Goldcliff Priory who made the first long-lasting attempt to tame the levels, and today's landscape is largely medieval in date. So today the levels are primarily in agricultural use, but they retain many of the ancient features, including reed-fringed fields, small settlements and roadways, which would be familiar to the Benedictine monks of those Norman times. Much of the Gwent Levels is below. Here's a picture of Gwent Levels today. Much of the land is below sea level, and were it not for the robust sea defences and a sophisticated inland drainage system to manage the fresh water running off the landscapes, the landscape would periodically be flooded by the high tides of the Severn Estuary. And this is a depiction of the Great Flood of 1607, but many subsequent floods remind us of that constant tension in the landscape between land and sea. I felt it was important to give a little tiny bit of history, because it really is the combination of local people managing a dynamic landscape through systems which have developed over thousands of years, which makes the heritage here so rare, so special, and such a rich resource that we need to protect and preserve for future generations. The levels are home to over 1,600 kilometres of handcrafted field ditches and reams, which together with the extensive shoreline make the levels a real biodiversity hotspot. Much of the area is designated as SSSI. There are 8 SSSIs across the levels, and they contain many rarities, particularly submerged plants and pond reeds, such as the world's smallest flowering vascular plant, Wolfia oryza. Some of the examples are pictured here, and the assemblage of water beetles is unique in Wales. The levels are also a stronghold for the rare shrill carder bee, which is a qualifying feature of the 8 SSSIs. It's a pretty special place. We're making a wonderful video at the moment to showcasing these attributes, which will be released before Christmas, but I don't have time unfortunately to show you a sneak preview today. I wanted to also talk briefly about some of the key threats and pressures. As I alluded to earlier, landscape partnerships tend to be focused on degraded landscapes, and whilst the Levels is truly wonderful in terms of its heritage, it's also facing some fairly major challenges. So I'll turn quickly to those, as they will help to contextualise the responses and solutions the partnerships are putting in place to combat these. So one of the key pressures is driven by its geography, located as it is on a major transport corridor for South Wales. Development pressure in the Levels has really accelerated in the last 50 years, and we're talking everything from transport infrastructure to industry, housing, and lately also renewable energy generation. There are many competing pressures in the same place, and combined, these pressures have created real anxiety for local people living there, as well as putting enormous pressure on the natural resources and the historic landscape character. It's important to say the partnership is not for or against any individual development in the landscape and can't pronounce on individual issues, but collectively we acknowledge that the cumulative pressure from all of these is really putting unacceptable pressure on the landscape, and this is a major enjeu for the future. Another major pressure comes from agricultural intensification, which has had a profound impact on the character of the Levels in the last 50 years as well. Large areas have been converted to arable, and intensive dairy farming has had major impacts on water quality and biodiversity losses. A particular issue for the Levels is the management of field ditches, the majority of which are on privately owned land. And while it is technically the landowner's responsibility to maintain those field boundaries, in reality, today that hasn't been happening to the extent needed. And as a result of that, 63% of the field ditches across the Gwent Levels and the SSSIs have become overgrown, heavily shaded, and threatening the aquatic plant and the invertebrate interest that the Levels is designated for, and why, which are so important to preserve. So large parts of that SSSI are now in failing condition. There's a real sense among local people, particularly older generations, it has to be said, that there's been a loss, an erosion of knowledge and skills in the landscape, particularly around the landscape special features and its habitat management. These local issues are being compounded by some more generalised societal trends, particularly in urban areas, which butt up to the Gwent levels with Newport and Cardiff, with people becoming increasingly disconnected from nature and their surrounding environment, leading to bigger urban rural divides and having major consequences on our health and well-being. So that's really the key drivers that brought our partners together, and it's very much the ambition of these partners to work together to capitalise on the funding that we've got for the Gwent levels, and also some of the more positive policy opportunities and societal shifts that are happening currently in Wales, so that we can create a step change in the way the landscape is valued, appreciated and protected for future generations. That's our major reason, raison d'etre, and our overall aims. So that's the background, why we're here, and now I want to turn to how we are helping to bring about some of that change, what we've achieved to date and what we're hoping our legacy will be. Obviously, this being Biodiversity Conference and the public engagement session, that's where I'm going to turn, even though our programme of work is much larger and covers everything from visitor infrastructure and destination management to community engagement in a much broader sense. So onto the projects. The first thing I just want to talk about briefly is what we've been doing to improve the SSSI condition. As we had this big chunk of money, we had a one-off opportunity to invest in a large-scale effort to improve the habitat there. So we gave the landscape a big and immediate boost by putting aside a major budget to restore 21 kilometres of the most degraded field ditches in the worst condition, i.e. the ones that have become the most dry and the most overgrown. So we set about the task of delivering this work package alongside local landowners who've all signed 10-year maintenance and management agreements as a condition of the funding. And here are some of the photos of the clearance works before and after. And so you can see a very different landscape, looking much better. And I'm pleased to say that also we've had the return of a lot of the aquatic vegetation and life which had been lost. That's really, really good to see. However, we do know that we cannot expect landowners to deliver public good type measures which cost them money and produce no profit without compensation. So another important project for us is focused on future agri-environment policy to try and make it better tailored to local environment and fully represent the cost of delivering for biodiversity. To date, these agri-environment schemes in the Gwent levels have had really poor take-up and success, and not much success. So this is a really important piece of our legacy work, and it's an area where RSPB is really focused. In fact, we have a whole other Welsh Government funded SMS project which is entirely looking at that, and I think John Cryer from RSPB is actually speaking about that work, so I won't say too much more about it. There are still quite a lot of uncertainties with that work as it's linked to the post-Brexit farm policy which is ongoing. However, as I said, it's a major important legacy piece of the puzzle there. I just wanted to say a small note on our public engagement throughout the habitat restoration work. So this has been really, really, really important. As you can probably imagine, the kind of work that we've been doing has the potential to be quite negatively received. In other landscapes, taking away scrub or hedgerow actually could be perceived quite negatively and be seen as very destructive. Obviously, in the Gwent levels, the special interest is those aquatic plant assemblages and the watercourses. So we've had to be very careful in explaining what we're doing and why we're doing it to the public, because it can look very shocking when you're doing this kind of work. At first, we did have some negative feedback, but since we've put in place a major PR strategy, I'm pleased to say that has now reduced, and generally speaking, we've got people on board. So we've used a real variety of mediums. We've got a newsletter, we've got the website, which is a really good source of content on the Gwent levels now. We use social media, we've used mixed media as well, video, photographs. We've had really, really good press interest. So I think that has been enormously important, almost as important as the habitat restoration network itself, getting people on board and supporting what we're doing. Another important aspect of our work for the long term and for the legacy has been working to upskill the local contractors. I mentioned earlier about the loss of skills and how we're trying to make our actions sustainable. So another pillar of the Living Levels project has therefore been training, both professional training and certification, and more informal training in habitat management and rural skills, for landowners and for volunteers. So early on in the project, we realised that there was a lack of local contractors with the correct qualifications to be able to carry out large-scale habitat restoration works. So we arranged for 12 local contractors to get their CPCS cards, which is basically a health and safety qualification. It enables them to safely use a 10-ton excavator and cable and be able to do cable avoidance, and that's a really important legacy because it's created a skilled workforce of local contractors who can bid for much bigger projects now in the future, helping boost their economic potential as well. So that's a really important and positive legacy that we've left behind. I wanted to talk a bit more detail now about our public engagement strategy and our community engagement. And one of the things that I wanted to stress was how we are trying to work intergenerationally across a huge range of ages because that's really important for our impact. So we started with the very youngest people who we want to become our future influencers. So one of our really important projects with this age group has been the creation of a levels learning resource for use with primary age children. The resource is packed with activities for teachers and learning activity leaders, showing them how to make use of their local environment. It's strongly linked to the curriculum key topics and activities. As when we were doing a research phase, we were told by teachers this would be vital to actually make sure that they use the resource. Another important part in the delivery of this project was that we organised some teacher training days where we got teachers down to actually carry out the activities from the resource themselves, which they fed back as being really important because it gave them the confidence to be able to deliver the activities with their classes. We wanted to do that this year as well to reinforce that, but unfortunately because of COVID we've had to put that back a year as schools are currently very, very focused on their the COVID crisis, and it's been very difficult to do that. However, we will reinforce that training, and part of our extension has been making sure that these projects can carry on. So yes, as I said earlier, we want to make sure that we want to work with these younger age groups. We know that early education has a huge bearing on future attitudes, but also young people can influence upwards through their households by talking to other members, siblings, parents, grandparents, and we've actually seen the results of that with engagement of our face-to-face events. We've had families, with the different generations involved. So that's really, really good, helping us to grow our impact across different audiences. So really, really positive to see. And this is just an example of one of the videos. So it's not just a paper resource, but we're using lots of different resources. So physical, video, and of course the actual learning resource itself. That's available on our website. So we've also been attempting to harness the power of young people by working with students at the local College Gwent. So not just those studying ecology, but in fact, we have focused on art students who have no natural links with biodiversity work, biodiversity topics and ecology, and that's been really wonderful. As it's really helped us to take our messages. They've really helped us to take our messages to their peers through a series of photography, art, and drama projects. So we've worked with tutors of those different subjects to embed the Gwent levels as a study subject for the students. And that has given them real life work experience and provided us with a platform to talk to what can be quite a difficult age bracket to engage, the 18 to 24 group. The results have been really, really positive. We've delivered a series of public exhibitions for their work. Prior to COVID, these were real life, but we've now moved them to a series of online galleries. They've designed logos, posters for us that we've used at our events, and they've also helped us with various different campaigns, including an awareness raising campaign against invasive non-native species in the levels. So that's been absolutely incredible. And the feedback that we've had from them has been so encouraging for us. They've said things like they had no idea they lived in such a special place, that this place was on their doorstep. They are extremely proud to live here. The project has inspired them to take an active interest in their local area, and similar things. And this is exactly the kind of energy and enthusiasm that we need if we want to create ambassadors for these kind of landscapes. So we feel this has been particularly valuable. And it's a great legacy that tutors of College Gwent want to keep this activity going beyond the end of our funding, which won't last forever. So that's another fantastic piece of a legacy puzzle. I also wanted to just briefly touch on one of our citizen science projects, of which there are actually several, but I haven't got time to talk about them all. So this was our Wild Watch project.
A couple of minutes then, Alison, thank you.
Okie dokie, a couple of minutes, right. Right, what more to say? Okay, so so this is training people to become wildlife recorders of 12 key indicator species for the levels. So we've trained them with field recording days and the use of the LERC app. So we're really hoping that you can help contribute to some of the paucity of data, which is another ongoing problem. I wanted to touch a little bit on some of our more experimental methods. We've worked with Tinshed Theatre Company, who are really specialists in helping us to reach more of the hard-to-reach audiences. So they've developed some really quite weird and wonderful theatrical characters, and you can see some of them pictured here. Mr. Blossoms, who was a character that that helped people understand the process of pollination. There's a bellboy taking people into a bug hotel there. This was really about creating a buzz around what we're doing. We had amazing engagement on social media and lots of press and media coverage. So that kind of project, which is a little bit outside of what we normally do, especially for organisations like the RSVB, has been really, really good, and again helped widen the impact of the project. So obviously COVID has had a massive impact on what we've been able to deliver. We've had to stop a lot of our face-to-face engagement in the last few months. That's forced us online, but that hasn't. I wanted to say that hasn't been an entirely negative thing. We've actually managed to reach many more global audiences. We've had Aboriginal Australians joining our creative writing group, as well as people from Texas, and genuinely, it's not an exaggeration to say that has enabled us to go global and beyond. Hopefully the end of COVID-19, we would probably continue in some form with that blended delivery. So that it's not all been bad. I was going to play a video at this point, but I'm not sure there's going to be time. So I just want to say one more really important point, which is about engagement with our decision makers, because that's something which I think has been super, super important for us. We've worked across different target groups, from grassroots to high-level decision makers. And at the very beginning of the project, we organised bus tours with assembly members, members of parliament, community councils, councillors. And although actually we didn't have brilliant attendance, we did have the attendance of some really big names who have now worked with us to do a lot of promotion and started a lot of initiatives. And some of those high-level problems that I alluded to earlier that we can't necessarily solve at the partnership level, they've started to be taken up to a high level, and there's a creation of a Welsh Government group chaired by John Griffiths that's looking into those. So that is an element of...
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That is it. Yeah, I am done. I just wanted to end on that notion of hope, that we are building a really solid foundation of the levels. We haven't, we're starting to win the battle of hearts and minds. We haven't won them all yet, but yeah, we're getting there, and it's a huge program. I've only been able to touch on it in a tiny bit of detail, but hopefully given you a flavour. And yeah, I'm willing to take any questions. Sorry if I've taken too long. It's very, very hard to do it in 20 minutes.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Alison. What we're going to do is have all of the speakers and then the questions at the end. And thank you for that presentation. There is a lot of information, but we do have a lot to get through today. So I'm sure people can contact you or find out more about you on your own websites and follow up afterwards. But we'll come back to questions a little bit later. So we're going to move straight on now to Becky Davis and Rachel Norton, who are working in Taff Bargoed, and they will give us our next presentation now. So thank you very much, both.
Thank you. I hope we can all hear me.
Morning.
So yeah, my name is Becky Davis, and I work with Natural Resources Wales, and I am one of the leads for the South Central Area Statement. So South Central being Cardiff, Vale of Glamorgan, Rhondda Cynon Taf, Merthyr, and Bridgend. So I'm here with Rachel Norton, who is from Merthyr District Council, to talk to you today about a fantastic river restoration project, the Taff Bargoed. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of sort of a quick introduction to the South Central Area Statement, which the Taff Bargoed project has been really influential in our development, particularly of our water sort of theme within the area statement. So then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the background and development of the Taff Bargoed project. And then I'm going to hand over to Rachel, who's going to talk through the reality on the ground and working with the community and our key stakeholders. And then you come back to me, and I'm going to try and tie it all up very seamlessly. So to begin, So the South Central Area Statement, for those of you who don't know, is the sort of local interpretation and delivery of the natural resources policy. So this is the national challenges and opportunities and how they fit into our local priorities and how we sort of look at those big policy, those big issues, and how what that means in the local area for local people and the local environment. So from here, we identified a series of themes and issues to address those key challenges and really work on those opportunities. And they are sort of working with water, our health and air quality, but really underpinning all that is how we build resilient ecosystems and connecting people with nature and making sure that the decisions that we make are sort of built within that. So completely underpinning everything that we do and how we deliver the area statements, we have three really core values, and these are valuing the natural environment, so really understanding it. It's about building equitable partnerships, so working with the people in the communities, but also sort of really key stakeholders, those who make decisions, and sort of working better together and understanding our overlaps between all our different organisations and the communities. And then putting the environment at the heart of decision making, so making sure that we aren't looking at or repeating the issues that we've had in the past, but building for more resilient futures for communities and our future generations. So why I'm sort of talking about this is because the TAF Argoid really embodies all our work around the South Wales valleys. When we look at water environment and when we consider the South Wales valleys, we have this legacy of a highly modified water environment and right across the entire catchment. So within the actual rivers and our communities, we deal with aging infrastructure and pollution and the flood risk. But then we also consider the sort of the catchment issues and the legacy that we've had there. So the Taff Bargoed, like a lot of our rivers in the valleys, in the coal fields, have that legacy of industrial revolution and then how we reclaim that land and how we live in it now. They're all very much tied together. And what's also, sort of really classic about the Taff Bargoed river system is that communities and how they're built around the water environment and how we use that water environment, how it is important to us in the sort of intrinsic value, but then also for our access and recreation, but then also the things that we rely upon the water environment, from drinking water to ensuring that we are safe and that our homes aren't flooded. So we have a great connection with that water environment, which we through the Taff Bargoed project, we need to sort of see those knock-on effects, but then also work with communities to sort of understand so they have a better perspective of their interaction with that water environment. So a little bit of background about the Taff Bargoed. As I say, like most river networks within the South Wales coalfields, there is a history of the coal mining there. So the Taff Bargoed was at the heart of one of, I think, probably within the world at one point, was one of the deepest coal mines. It certainly was in the UK. And the Taff Bargoed River was diverted and then buried underneath this exceptionally deep coal mine. So for, I think it was over 100 years this colliery was in place, and then in 1992 it finally did close its doors, and the sort of the thinking about that land and how that land's going to be restored and reclaimed started. So the thinking around site restoration started, and there's a significant amount of earthworks needed to sort of look at that piece of land. And they did speak to communities, and the sort of overriding message was they wanted green space, open space for them to use. So that sort of was followed through, and as part of the reclamation scheme, 2 online lakes were created within the sort of the centre of the main colliery site. I don't think there was actual people didn't say they wanted a lake, but that's what they got. And there's been a sort of bedding in period over the last few decades where people have really grown to use the site and really value its recreational benefits. So the Taff Bargoed or Park Taff Bargoed, known in the community, has now just got the one lake. The upper lake has completely sort of been succeeded into a wetland area, but the second lake is very much used as an important site for angling. There's walks all the way around it, so lots of sort of families use the site. And it's also, and I'll always get this wrong, it is a really important site on the water polo canoeing scene. So every year there's a big sort of big bringing together and a big sort of competition, and people from all over the country come to play water polo canoeing. So yeah, it's a really important site, and over the last few years, this problem of siltation has really sort of become more and more prevalent. So the problem being, looking at the entire catchment, you've got a lot of siltation coming down. Now, we undertook an assessment of the catchment and to look at what the issues are, and we learned that the river is very much incised. It's shorter than it should naturally be, and as a result, it has really increased the amount of erosion processes going on, and the first place that those that siltation is sort of dropping out is in those lakes. So as I said earlier on, we've lost the top lake, and if nothing is done, we're going to completely lose the second lake as well, and it will revert into a wetland and with a river running through it. Now, that is an option, but this is a very much this is very loved and important site for the community. So we do need to have that balance. And I think working in the South Wales Valleys, we've sort of very quickly realised in looking around this issue of the Taff Bargoed Park is that we live in a very modified environment, and we cannot take it back to complete natural state because our communities live within it, and the costs would just be absolutely prohibitive. So we have to work with these problems and find ways of rebalancing and replicating natural processes, and to having that sort of compromise, making it a resilient environment for biodiversity and ecosystem health, but then also ensuring that the communities also have that resilience in living and using that environment as well. So we need very much an integrated solution. So we undertook an assessment and looked at the entire catchment and how that connectivity with the modified landscape and also the sort of history of the modified water environment and how they connect. And as I say, the communities and then in the wider catchment, how we use the land is a really important part of working together on a solution. But it took a little bit of time for us to understand and the connections across the catchment. So we have a duty to work with our communities so they better understand that those interactions as well, and that we can't just recreate 2 open lakes. That's not a sustainable or resilient way of managing this. So we have to sort of look at alternative solutions, and working through the Wellbeing Future Generations Act the well-being goals and the sustainable management of natural resources principles, we very much could evolve the thinking and develop a really integrated project, which we were successful in getting sustainable management scheme funding, and we could start a 3-year project. So now I'm going to hand over to Rachel. So Rachel is the project manager of the work and is employed as part of that project. And Rachel is the person who works on the ground and is working on these challenging sort of balance with people. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Rachel. Ooh. Hello, Rachel. Oh, I don't.
Rachel must have disconnected. I've just promoted her now to a presenter again.
Okay.
So she should be able to turn the microphone and camera back on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Rachel.
Am I back on? I am so sorry about that. I have no idea what happened. Okay, am I on for this slide now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm Rachel Morton, back. This is a obviously European-funded SMS project, co-funded by Merthyr Council and NRW. So it's a whole catchment area scheme. So we'll be working upstream of the lake as well on the issues of erosion, poaching, watering, crossing points, lack of riparian vegetation, and this will be addressed in partnership with landowners and occupiers.
Ooh, have we lost Rachel again?
Are you able to carry on, Becky?
I will, yeah. So, so as Rachel was saying, this is a project about the whole catchment. So looking at the management of the landscape and working with commoners and landowners and public landowners as well, and how we can reconnect the river corridor, how we can sort of look at that wider landscape management and to reduce the amount of erosion and siltation entering into the water body in the first place. We're also looking at opportunities to sort of create length in the catchment, so restore those natural hydromorphological processes, which at the moment are accelerating that erosion. So that combination of landscape management, but then also the sort of in-channel erosion as well, to reduce that load sort of downstream. That is essential, we see, as so that when we try and tackle those fundamental problems which a significant portion of the community really care about, that will allow the sustainability of the work. So at least then we're reducing the amount of siltation, because those lakes will always silt up because of that's not a natural process. So we need to tackle the land at the lake, but then also tackle the wider catchment issues for that resilience in the system. So I'm not 100% sure what Rachel was going to say exactly, but one of the sort of things we wanted to work with those communities, very much sort of understanding their needs for the site, to look at how they use it and what are they willing to compromise. So in restoring those natural processes and or replicating those natural processes, because we can't go back to natural, but so they can continue that. It's a really important, valuable use of the site, but then also we can make it more resilient, so that that service and that resource will be there for a long time to come, and we won't have to sort of do all this again in 10 years. The alternative solution was very much to dredge the entire place. Now, that cost, sort of, when we did look into it, ended up being prohibitive. So the sort of balance was that we would have to reduce the size, but also maintain those services. So we're working with JBA to sort of look at the options, and what is essential here is that everybody have their say. This site is a legacy of something that was just done to communities. It's also the reclamation was just something that was done, and we want to make sure that when we look at the issues, that we want to sort of make sure that people understand the issues, that we can't just have open lakes, and understand and value the natural processes, but also recognize the importance this has to people in the community and their well-being, and to local economies. As I say, this is an important site for the local community, and people from all over the country come here to play water polo canoeing every year. So this is, you know, a little village in the middle of the valleys, and that's why it's really important sort of site. So this is a real challenge because we all want something different. So we need to sort of really work with it and what is technically possible as well. We have some significant modifications downstream which we can't modify. It is ridiculously expensive, but how we can sort of replicate natural processes and still maintain that natural resource. So yeah, we've sort of looked at, you know, the inspiration and talking to the communities, and sort of so we could lay out the sorts of things that we were looking at. We didn't know what was going to be technically feasible. We're still working through that, but give them an idea of the sorts of interventions that we could do so that we could manage this issue long term, but then also they could manage their natural resource. So this was a kind of inspiration and something that we could go out and talk to people, because the sort of the understanding ranges widely to really impressive naturalists who really understand the place. Would love to see it back into a wetland, but then also anglers and canoeists and how they use it, and just somebody, you know, walking with their children and walking their dog on a lunchtime. And obviously this is a site which has become even more important during current times. So I started talking to you about the area statement, and sort of try and bring you back to that now, and show you how these are completely connected. So it was the working around this has been going on for a long time, and it took a long time of getting people together to get to the point where we could get funding. But we what is it's then that has really influenced the way that we've sort of built up the area statement. And now the way I see the Taff Bargoed project is very much an area statement in real life. It's incorporating how we are building resilience into the ecosystem and to enhance and protect the local biodiversity, but also make it resilient for the ecosystem benefits that we get out of it. So slowing flows, cleaning water through sort of managing siltation, and improving the in-channel habitats. That land management element to make sure that we are restoring our sort of freeze habitats, and, you know, doing this through woodland creation, through restoring the sort of upland streams, and also through sort of conservation grazing, that balance of grazing to enhance grasslands. But we're also sort of looking at, we're doing this with the community. It's such an important aspect of it, because, you know, we understand that this is a really important resource for people's well-being. And, you know, the green recovery, this is there. I'm nearly finished, thank you. Yes, it's a really important thing, and we've learned all our way through this. And as I say, it's something which is very typical of the other valley rivers. And so learning about how do we do these things on the ground from a physical thing, but then also how to do that with working with communities is a fantastic learning opportunity for us, and something that we can then roll out and learn from and scale up in other river catchments across the South Wales valleys. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for filling in there, Becky. I have no idea what happened. It wasn't stage fright, it was technology. But thanks for that.
No problem.
Thank you, Becky. That was, yes, very well done, jumping into the breach. And Rachel will bring you in for the questions at the end. So sorry that we lost you there for a minute. So we're now moving on to a pre-recorded presentation on Newport Bee Friendly scheme from Lucy Arnold-Matthew from Newport City Council.
I joined the countryside team here at Newport City Council in the spring of 2019. My role is to support schools to enhance biodiversity within their grounds, support communities and volunteer groups with biodiversity projects, as well as supporting our own teams with the management of a number of countryside sites and local nature reserves. By the end of my first week in my new role, it became clear to me that one of Newport Council's priorities was to improve how it managed areas for pollinators. I was asked if I thought I could make Newport a bee-friendly city. I started to wonder exactly how I was going to do this. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it alone, and my biggest chance of making the most change was to get as many people on board as possible. As the Bee Friendly scheme states, it's not just about bees, we want people to take action to help all pollinators. In July 2019, the leader of the council put forward a cross-party motion to support the initiative from the Welsh Government and Friends of the Earth to make Newport a bee-friendly city. The aim of the motion was to protect and enhance its pollinator habitats through management of green spaces. The motion included the objectives to protect and enhance, increase awareness and increase understanding of the importance of pollinators. With this in mind, we set the goal of achieving bee-friendly city status for Newport by this time the following year. My first port of call was to get to know the grounds maintenance team and find out how they were already working and what they were already doing to support pollinators. I have to say that I was really pleasantly surprised. There's already a lot of thought and care going into choosing the right kind of flower and seed mixes in their planting schemes. There were raised beds, wildflower areas, and mown margins and floral displays on roundabouts, already in progress. We started to document all of these things and were surprised by how it all started to add up. Collectively, we agreed that these already existing sites would now become designated pollinator sites and would form the absolute minimum that we would commit to delivering year on year. It also became the foundation for us to build on. We then started to think how great it would be if we had at least one designated pollinator site in each ward within the authority area. There were 20 wards, 13 of which already had what we had newly designated as pollinator sites, so suddenly this idea started to become achievable. Some wards had more than others, and some wards had none. So we started to concentrate our efforts in the wards that had none, and then looked for opportunities for where we could improve managing an area for pollinators within these wards. It was during this time that I received an email from a local resident that frequented St Willis Cemetery, a lady called Bev, a nature lover that walked through the cemetery daily, bemused by the fact that she blissfully wandered through yesterday admiring the flowers that had come through, and on the same walk today all the flowers had gone, they'd been mowed down. And she just wanted to know why, and to be honest, so did I. So I asked the grounds team why the area had been mowed, and the answer was, well, we've always done it, we get complaints if we don't. But we have some ideas of where we can change the mowing. Getting to know the grounds team and how they work has been fundamental in implementing change, understanding the barriers that they come up against, whether it's lack of resource, lack of time, lack of knowledge. It's helped us to realise that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding a balance for nature, a balance for people, and a balance for us as an organisation implementing change where we can. There had been previous discussions about introducing leaf to grow areas in the cemetery, but that's where it stopped. So we decided to revisit it. We talked about if there was scope to change how we manage these areas, what resources did we have, and what do we need? Was it even achievable? And we started to wonder how those that visited the cemetery would feel about us creating leaf to grow areas. I responded to Bev, explained that as a council we were looking at new ways of how to carry out a more sympathetic approach to managing areas for pollinators in line with the Bee Friendly scheme, and I asked her if she would like to meet us on site to see if we could come up with a way of working this to everyone's benefit. Bev was thrilled. She was half expecting a generic standard response from the council, but instead she was meeting with an organisation that really wanted to hear her concerns and how it affected her and her community on a localised level. And we wanted to take action to implement positive change. With her help, we could take steps to becoming a bee-friendly city, and more importantly, she could play a part in formulating that change and feeding into something bigger. Between us all, we identified 2 large areas that we would pilot a new mown regime, and we spoke to those that frequented the cemetery to gauge their response and feedback, which was mostly positive, with maybe a few sceptics thrown in. The grass was left to grow for the rest of the summer. Flowers and grasses flourished, bees and butterflies thrived, and signs were installed to give a little background to those passing through. At the end of the summer, a cut had been arranged to cut the long grass and the flowers that had now gone to seed, and the orisons were to be raked off and collected. And then disaster struck. As the machine moved in, out moved the mammals that also made the long, undisturbed grass their home. Unfortunately, although we'd got it right for the bees, we had got it wrong for the mammals. By trying to save the one, we'd inadvertently damaged the other. Devastated by how we'd got it so wrong, we went back to the drawing board. How are we ever going to be able to increase our capacity to maintain and increase habitat for pollinators elsewhere if we couldn't even get it right in the smaller areas? This was one mistake that we had to learn from. We had to get this right next year, and that's exactly what we did. During the next growing season of 2020, we spent time working out how we could make sure that these areas were supporting all wildlife, training our teams on how to carry out thorough checks for wildlife before the machines went in. Although site checks were always done before, it transpired that when it came to it, they didn't really know what they were looking for. This year, I'm happy to say that all aspects of this particular area worked really well. We learned some hard lessons, but it has enabled us to move forward and build confidence within our teams and our communities, which in turn has also enabled us to build capacity, increasing the amount of habitat that we now manage for pollinators. We needed that room to make mistakes in a pilot area to ensure that we didn't make the same mistakes on a larger scale as we moved forward with our plans to take on more sites and achieve bee-friendly city status. We also worked together with our partners at the Living Levels project. They too were working on a pollinator project with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust and BugLife, and were keen to see if there were any larger sites that sat within the Gwent levels that we could designate as pollinator sites. We identified 2 potential areas of interest. One was around 10 acres in Coed Cernew, and the other roughly a 5-acre site with potential for more at the Newport Household Waste Recycling Centre, otherwise lovingly known locally as the Tip. With recorded sightings of shrill carderby in very close proximity, both of these sites have huge potential to support this extremely rare species. Joining up with partners with a shared goal has proved to be invaluable for us to getting these areas designated as pollinator sites and being able to commit to their long-term management. The shared bee-friendly goal has reinforced the work that each of us as an organisation has done. Shortly after the signs were installed, I was contacted by a local resident, Sue. She's a member of the local community group that carries out regular litter picks and conservation activities. I arranged to meet with Sue. She introduced me to a couple of members of the group. Still fairly new to the role, they took me on a tour of the area. Nobody knows these areas better than the people that live there. Spending this time with them, getting to know them, and finding out what the priorities to them are on a local level have again proven to be invaluable. A keen beekeeper and wildlife gardener herself, Sue was keen to hear more about the council's plans on becoming a bee-friendly city and how they, as a community, could get involved. During these first initial meetings, the mowing schedules were already well underway. With further discussions and the community on board, Coed Cernew became our first residential pilot site to undergo changes to its mowing regime. As of the next season, 2020, all of the green spaces within the housing estate would be left to grow, with just a narrow margin mown as a maintenance strip in key areas, such as next to footpaths and around the fence lines. Again, having the backing of the community and these relationships is key to implementing this change. Building relations and being able to have honest discussions with members of the community have probably proven to be one of the most valuable aspects of the bee-friendly scheme. These relationships have enabled us once again to strike a balance for nature, a balance for people, and a balance for us as an organisation trying to implement change. I'm going to play you a short video that Sue made so that you can hear in her own words what this means to her and her community.
Hello, my name is Sue Colwell and I'm a volunteer worker for wildlife in Coed Cernew and Dyffryn, Newport. As a beekeeper and nature enthusiast, I understand the vital importance of the many different species of bees, but having bee-friendly accreditation as a city means a lot more than just providing for bees. We need to look at nature as a whole, as an interconnected support system where all forms of life play an important role and where we as humans have responsibility to help nature thrive rather than just survive through our actions. The scale of insect decline across the UK is of real concern. They are the necessary link that underpin our whole ecology. And that is why I and many other local residents have chosen to champion nature and give our time to help insects and other wildlife to thrive and not just survive here. The creation and maintenance of suitable habitats to enable this support is a priority, and we do have many amazing local places for nature in and around our locality. From greens, lakes and ponds, to gardens, woodlands, parklands, meadows, and even the roadside verges. These are all places where, with a little human empathy, a little knowledge and supportive action, could be wonderful havens for wildlife. We need large areas of our green spaces to be left just a little bit wilder, to provide habitat where native plants and insects can thrive, to provide the support needed for the whole web of life. We can see here the obvious benefits to wildlife with these council-maintained road verges. There are those left to grow and bloom with wildlife support potential, and then those that are regularly scalped, parched and devoid of life. Here in Coedcurno and Dyffryn, we have many residents who regularly litter pick and clean up our local places to help nature thrive. Educating adults and children about the natural world around us so that we understand we are not separate from nature but an important and integrated part of it. We are working with Newport City Council and other agencies such as the Woodland Routes to Wellbeing, Grow in Space, Keep Wales Tidy and local hedgehog and wildlife rescues to create and improve wildlife habitats across the area. Planting wildflowers and trees, organic gardening, installing bird and bat boxes, setting up hedgehog highways and nest boxes, bug and bee hotels and log piles, all to benefit nature and ultimately ourselves too. When people come together and invest their time and skills in projects such as these, they are more likely to engage with and enjoy being out in nature. And as we know, the benefits for our own physical and mental health and well-being are immense. As a community, we are more actively supporting each other through friendships and common interests, whilst together providing the support needed to nurture nature and help it thrive in our own little pocket of Wales.
Working together with communities like this, in this way, has given us and our teams a little room to grow and learn together. Although we aim to get things right first time, sometimes mistakes do happen. But when, or if they do, it's on a smaller scale, enabling us to rethink the situation or find a solution together before rolling out these changes on a much larger scale as planned in the years to come. Having this room to learn and implement change with the support of this community is enabling us as an organisation to build capacity one step at a time. During this time, a new group had started in Rogerstone. Sarah, a resident, had started to gain followers for her tips on wildlife gardening and a knowledge of the local wildlife, and soon the Wild About Rogerstone group was formed. She'd started to look a little more closely at the area and put forward ideas of enhancements that could be done to benefit nature. She also had an idea to create a community garden, listening to ideas from within the community as to what they would like to include. A meeting for interested parties was held. This was a difficult one for me. As a council, we own very little land in this area, and so other than moral support, ideas and networking opportunities, I wasn't really sure what I could bring to the table, unless we altered the mowing regimes of some of the roadside verges. Historically, these verges have always been kept very neat. We'd already changed how we managed the verges of the Mon and Brett Canal that runs right through Rogerstone, and we'd had a very mixed response. But momentum within the community for the Wild About Rogerstone group was growing, and with that, so was the support for the Leave to Grow areas. The verges of one of the main roads into Rogerstone became a Leave to Grow area and a designated pollinator site. During lockdown, with support from us, the council, the group held a competition amongst local children to design a bee-friendly poster, and the prize was for us to have this poster made into a sign and displayed on the site. Again, another example of how building relations within the community at a local level can help to feed into the bigger picture.
Hello, I'm Sarah Simons from Wild About Rogerstone in Newport. I established a local wildlife group called Wild About Rogerstone May 2019 to help local people who wanted to make a difference with wildlife know really what they can do and what's suitable in the area. So I can bring my ecology experience, I work as a consultant ecologist, to give them guidance on how to manage grassland or what they can do in their gardens to help bees and other wildlife thrive. I got involved with the Newport Council's idea of changing grassland management, and we've got a few verges now in Rogerstone which have been left long all summer, and it's great to see the wildflowers coming through. We've got early spring wildflowers all the way through the summer with sort of wild carrot and knapweed and things right into November, which are still providing nectar sources for bees and butterflies. And the long grass itself will just attract so many more insects, other insects as well as bees, which will then be food for birds and bats, and reptiles will come in, shelter in the grassland. So there's absolutely loads of benefits, and it actually will look at a lot of a nicer area, in my opinion. When it's all in flower next year, we can add more seeds and make it even more colourful as well. So it's been a great initiative to be a part of. Within the wider Newport Council, I understand Newport is now a bee-friendly city, which is absolutely great news. I see people living alongside areas where they've got wildflowers, they've got access to much more interesting green spaces than some of the green deserts that you can have in parks where close mown grass doesn't support anything really. And not just wildflowers and grassland, but also fruit trees, fruit bushes, all amazing nectar sources for bees, and I think of benefit to people as well. So wherever you have a bee-friendly area, which is going to have a much more interesting looking area for people to enjoy, and a great education resource as well for people to enjoy, and for school children to go out and actually see wildlife, butterflies, bees flying around, and doing all the things they learn about in school. It's got to be a good thing, so I'm really pleased to be a part of making Newport a bee-friendly city and doing our bit here in Rogerstone. Thank you.
This year, we had planned a targeted approach to schools to help educate, engage and involve children and support schools in becoming bee-friendly accredited in their own right. I had already had a bit of a test run and spent the day exploring habitat and holding bee counts with a year group from St Willis Primary School the previous summer. They were the first school in Newport to attain their own bee-friendly status. Incidentally, these activities were held in Bellevue Park, the first of the Victorian parks and gardens in Newport to have their own bee-friendly status and the first park to stop using all pesticides, leading the way for others to follow suit. Unfortunately, COVID-19 had other ideas this year and we were plunged into lockdown, which meant that the planned work with schools was unable to go ahead, and I had to think of an alternative way to engage with local children in a way that would connect them with nature in their own homes. And with that, my Back Garden Biodiversity YouTube channel was born. Now, I'm not exactly the next big thing on YouTube. The videos I created were simple activities to benefit nature using everyday items found around the home. Things like making a bee drinker, building a bee and bug hotel, planting seeds. We shared videos with the schools who started to send them out to children as part of their online learning, and they were shared on the Newport City Council's social media pages. Before I knew it, I was getting photographs sent to me of the activities that the children had done and emails from teachers telling me how much the children had loved completing the activities. So, although it wasn't the approach that we had planned, we had managed to adapt and engage with children during a time of surreal uncertainty.
Hi, I'm Councillor Laura Lacey from Newport City Council and also the Biodiversity Champion for the city. About 18 months ago we brought the bee-friendly motion for the city to full council, which was passed unanimously. It's a really important initiative and a really easy initiative to take part in. You know, it's really important for the city to be pollinator friendly. It can be done quite inexpensively and you can get a lot of people involved, children in the community, you know, both adults as well, with community gardens, non-cut areas of grass, and also the schools are getting involved because they can get individual accreditation for the school to be bee friendly, which has been taken up quite a lot, and it's exciting for children to, you know, get their little plaque that they're bee friendly. You know, in this day and age, with austerity and you know, shortage of money, this is something that everybody can take part in, even in your own back garden, for, as I said, very little cost, but for massive impact going forward. We need to look after our pollinators. We need to make sure that everything, you know, is okay. The change in the changes in, you know, basically our behaviour, the changes in our pesticides. It's something that we can all do. We can all bring forward and get the city thriving with our little bees and other pollinators that fly across the city. Thank you very much.
In January 2020, we received our official Bee Friendly city status. I think having a recognised Bee Friendly accreditation to aim for has certainly helped add substance and to gain support to implement Bee Friendly changes across the council. There's been a real shift in attitude and energy with both staff and residents, more so this year than in previous years. Maybe because people have experienced for themselves firsthand the benefits that nature can bring. And we look forward to rolling out more bee-friendly changes across the city in the years to come. I joined the country.
Oh, I think we missed 5 seconds at the end there, but hopefully that wasn't too critical. So I realised I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of this session, so I do apologise. My name's Karen LaRue, and I'm the Welsh Government Biodiversity Policy Team Leader. We now have a little bit of time for questions. We don't seem to have, is Rachel and Lucy available? I've realised that one of the side effects of running a pre-recorded video is that, Lucy, you've actually answered all your questions as you've been going along, so you saved a bit of time there as well. So I'm just checking if we might be able to run Alison's video at 2 minutes at the end. Someone will tell me in a moment. But in the meantime, I just wondered if anybody's got any questions, they can add them into the chat box at the bottom. But in the meantime, I was just going to pick up a few of the things that really jumped out to me of those talks. Obviously, what was linking them all together was the importance of talking to local communities, getting feedback, interacting with those. And there was lots of good things in there. I was really interested to hear about your initiatives with the arts, Alison. I don't know if that's going on in any other areas. Rachel, it would be great if you could say a little bit more about what you were going to talk about. And Lucy, I thought that was really refreshing that you talked about the mistakes you've made and learning from those and doing better the next time. So if I can come back to you then, Rachel, if that's okay, as we didn't hear from you in your presentation. Is there anything you'd like to add very quickly in a couple of minutes?
I'm not too sure if we've lost her again, guys.
Oh my goodness. poor Rachel. In that case, I will go. Can we just pick up on the arts point then, because it's something that I'm not very familiar with, and you've obviously done lots of work on that, Alison, and it would be interesting to see whether other projects have also been using those methods. I'll open that up to any of you. Alison, do you want to go first?
Sorry, what was the question? You want to know?
Oh, about the arts approaches you've been taking with colleges. It's something that I've been hearing a bit more about, people linking up with arts in various ways, and poetry and paintings and all sorts of things. Seems to be something which I'm less familiar with, but becoming more popular.
Yeah, I guess the inspiration rate, well, it's a sort of twofold. I guess, as I sort of alluded to at the beginning, biodiversity conservation is such a big challenge that we often find ourselves talking to the same people who are already interested, and I think that RSPB certainly has discovered in recent years that we need to try and have a much more diverse sort of toolkit really in terms of engagement, because that allows us to take messages into new places. I'm working with theatre groups like Tin Shed. That's their speciality. They've delivered some really amazing, mainly theatrical but also art installations. They did the Moby Dick on the Transporter Bridge, which was just a lovely way of engaging people with history, their local history, and monuments and locally. And I think that's the angle we've come at it really, is that we want to get as many people engaged as possible. It's a hook more than anything. It's a hook to get people talking about the kinds of subjects that we need people to be talking about. As it's not, we're using the arts, for our purposes, because obviously there is an important link there as well. But yeah, that's kind of mainly how we've come at it. And then it's been really interesting to see that people who have got involved with some of our arts projects have also then got involved in other areas of program, which volunteering or history research, or various other threads. So that's been really useful and informative for us. I don't know if that covers it.
Someone else want to jump in while Karen comes back?
There's not much I can add. That's something I haven't worked
She this
with
morning.
around it.
Sorry. I'm back, so I'll jump in. I was just going to say anyway that there's a question here which a couple of people want to know, which is what is the best form of engagement which has actually made the project happen? Is it schools? Is it landowners? Is it village halls? Is it the arts? What is the sort of the best hook you found?
Well, do you want me to answer again, or somebody else? My answer would probably be that you can't take a single approach, because that is alienating to lots of different groups, and also the form of media that you use is really important. So if we did everything online, there was certainly, at least prior to lockdown, because COVID has actually forced a lot of people online. I went to a meeting with our history volunteers. Its average age is 60 to 70, just a couple of weeks ago, and they were all on Zoom and presenting, and really, really au fait with this technology, which a few months ago they found quite alienating. So obviously that has had a huge impact on the way that we probably work, and will work in the future. But yeah, when we first started, it was really important for us to do things like flyering through letterboxes, using community notice boards, because otherwise we got a lot of complaints that actually our messages weren't reaching some important people in the community. So I think, yeah, it's really difficult to pick out. Obviously, working with the landowners is really important for certain outcomes that we need to achieve on the ground. But then we also need to win hearts and minds, because ultimately, if we want to influence policy, we need people. We need people to put pressure on decision makers, and they need to understand the issues. So I wouldn't like to single out one particular area of engagement as being more important than another, because it all has to work together. This is a huge societal challenge, and it needs multiple responses.
Thanks for that, Alison. Lucy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, in terms of Be Friendly, I think the community engagement has been key in putting sort of ideas into action. We've had a lot of volunteers, helping us and helping us identify areas. And I think getting to know the communities has been really an essential part of being able to kind of make those little transformations in areas. And again, it's those opportunities where we've learned from our mistakes as well, and engaging the communities during that process. Obviously, working with schools is a great way of getting a message across, and giving some ownership to the children within their own school grounds, and as well, has been really sort of beneficial. But I think to see the most action from my point of view, it is getting in with the community groups and working with those communities directly.
And the same question then to you, Becky.
I echo what both Alison and Lucy have said, that there's a lot of different ways of doing it, and community groups. We've had an established community group, the Friends of Taffbargoid Park, and so they're a fantastic place to sort of go. But one of the challenges is not just being completely focused by their voice, and there are lots of other sort of more sort of ad hoc users of the site, or aren't sort of affiliated with anything. So working with additional partners like the South East Wales Rivers Trust to as a part of their engagement process into classrooms and volunteer networks as well. So that's been a really important part of really understanding the total need of the place, and maybe not paying too much over attention to the loudest of voices. So it's a challenge, as always, working with communities. But yeah, a varied audience is always the most sustainable, I think, in the long run.
And very worthwhile. And I think I really enjoyed the advocacy from Sue in your video, Lucy, as well. I thought that was really powerful.
Been a real key part in helping us to learn the processes ourselves and implementing change. So, you know, without those community groups, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So,
yeah. Okay, so on that note then, I will wrap up this morning's session. Thank you so much to all our speakers and to all of you who've been listening in and hopefully enjoying the presentations. Just a few items of housekeeping at the end to say that there's much more information on our Hoover platform, and you can see other sessions there and register for those. And we'd also be really grateful if you would provide us with some feedback on each of the sessions. And there will be an end of conference evaluation coming round eventually also. So we'd be very grateful for your feedback. But if I can just now thank all of the presenters, Alison, Lucy, Becky, and Rachel also, and I'm so sorry we didn't get to hear much from Rachel. But generally, our technology has been running exceedingly smoothly thanks to the backstage team. So thank you very much to everybody, and we will see you again at 12:30 for the the LMP Cymru showcase, and then more about working with communities to follow on with that. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
thanks.
Bye.
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 I was on talking to you on mute. I was going to say, do you want to go? Do you want me to?
Yeah, if I just make you a host, I've got my lunch with me, but I just really need a comfort break. A second.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was going to suggest you did that. Okay, cool. Yeah, go and have a break, and I can have mine when the session starts.
Okay, I won't be long. I'll be 5-10 minutes. I just gotta.
Take your time. You've had a whole morning of it. It's been a hectic morning.
Yeah. Everything. I've got everything. I haven't got everything programmed in yet, but everything's loaded to the server. So I just gotta assign it. So that'll only take 5 minutes. Okay, I won't be long.
Yeah, no issue at all.
Hi, Chris. Bear with me 2 seconds. I'll just put the brief up for you. How are you doing? I can't hear you at the moment, so we need to click the microphone button up by here somewhere.
Okay, that should be okay now, hopefully.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so I'm just loading everything in a second. So, what's the order?
So the order is first me.
Yeah.
So my presentation, then Trevor Theobald.
Yeah.
Then the 2 short videos, so it can either be Lucy and then Rose, or Rose and then Lucy. And after that we got Adam Rose presentation.
Yeah. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the long one. Share document. Oh, I put that in the wrong. Uh, 11:25. I put that in. 11:25. This one.
Adam, I'm just going to go grab some lunch now.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, so the Rose. Where's that? So I'll do Lucy first, and then we'll do the other one here.
Okay.
Cancel. Share document. Is it the right? It's the Craig Gladys green roof.
Yeah, so that's Rose's, is the green roof. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check it definitely has sound on, because I know there was 2 links going around.
Yeah, I know. I've got the old one, so I'm just getting the one that you sent through earlier. I'm just getting that now.
Yeah, just to double check, because I know there was 2 links. One, unbeknown to me, didn't have any sound on, and the other one has got sound, even though it.
Yeah, you were completely right. I thought someone was going to be talking over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got that now. Right, save that there. Luckily, it's not very big. Upload that. Okay. While I'm uploading that in the background. Right. Sorry, Trevor. Let's get Trevor set up. I know Trevor's got pre-recording, but okay. Trevor, you need to press the buttons above my head here. They're labelled in this image to the right. That'll turn on your camera and your microphone. Lucy's already here because she had a video in the last session. She's just muted it. Oh, there she is. Hello, Trevor.
All good?
Yeah, can
Yep.
see you.
Hi there.
Yeah, good.
Good, good.
Let me just get this uploaded and then we'll run through.
Hiya, Trevor. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Chris.
New content. Green roof. Okay, so on the pre-recordings, obviously I don't have a camera. I don't have a camera box like this. So I just do a chat and I just stretch it all the way up and then I've got the video playing on the left hand side. So I've got that for Chris, I've got that for Trevor, I've got that for Lucy's 6-minute video, and then we will have that for the green roof. So all in all, I think that comes to around 40 minutes-ish, or just over.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, I think mine is about 25. Trevor, I know you narrowed yours down a little bit.
Yep, I think it's just about 20.
Okay. So you're looking at maybe 50 odd once the videos have come in, so...
2 seconds. Got some feedback from you, Adam. I'm just going to mute you a second. Okay, carry on, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, so it sounds like maybe when we're getting close to the 50-minute mark,
yeah.
And then obviously for Adam, that would leave kind of 10 minutes for Adam. So, yeah, I mean, I will mention, you know, all the preamble about the questions and things like that, but it might be that we might have to take the majority of them offline, which I'm happy to as a presenter. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just make sure I export that chat at the end of the session if we don't get through to it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So as I flick through these now, our cameras are going to go off because there isn't a camera. I don't think there's a camera button. Is Jeff facilitating? Is this?
I'm facilitating as well. Yeah.
Is Jeff a liaison now? Jeff?
Yeah, I think he'll be doing the question stuff, I think.
Just let him in then. Right. Okay. So let's just run through these now. So. Okay, so we'll probably start on something like this, Chris, if you want to, when people come in, and just do a welcome.
Yep.
As soon as you introduce, just say you've got a pre-recorded presentation. So I'll switch straight into that.
Mm-hmm.
So this video box will be gone, and then the chat will be like that.
Okay.
So I'll press play, and that'll run through.
Mm-hmm.
I always send a backup to YouTube just in case people have bandwidth issues. So if you notice me copy and pasting a YouTube chat box, YouTube link into the chat, that's what that is.
Okay. Do I get the go ahead from you, Adam, to start with the introductions and stuff, or do I just start bang on the dot 12:30 regardless?
I'll count you down. So there's a block on the room, so I'll just say I'm letting everyone in 3, 2, 1. Take a breath and then start. Then off we go.
Okay, cool.
So as soon as your 27 minutes and 46 seconds is done, we'll go to Trevor's. So Trevor's, I've got your pre-recorded session presentation with sound.
Yep. Good.
Okay. So that's 21 minutes. Then we'll play Lucy's 6-minute or 7-minute video. I'll just upload the green roof now.
Just while you're doing that, is my microphone better now? No feedback from you now? Adam here.
Check. 1, 2. Yeah, it's fine. It's just you didn't have headphones on, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I was trying without, but no good.
The microphone software in this app is very strange. Okay, let's check this got sound.
We can't hear.
Hi, my name is Rose.
There you go.
I'm local.
There's no sound for that first.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, that's fine.
And then we will do. Then we'll switch to Adam's. Stop sharing.
So am I the only one presenting live? Is that the gist of this? Crumbs. Don't know what I was thinking. Glutton for punishment doing it yesterday as well.
Yeah, I think your slot may be a little bit tight, Adam, towards the end. So just to give you a heads up, so.
Yeah, I've just run through it twice, and it's 11 minutes, which is a bit of a problem. So I will whiz. I try not to garble too much.
No, that's okay.
So Adam, you were in yesterday, so you know how the presentations work, don't you?
Yeah, I've learnt the hard way that so you've got to click on that little arrow on the screen rather than your keyboard or whatever. But yeah, that's fine. Got there in the end.
Let's just check this is the right one. I'm pretty sure I had the right date on it. 25th.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Okay. So as each thing finishes, do you want me to go straight into the next one, Chris, or do you want to come back on and introduce the next?
I don't mind. I'm just mindful of time, I guess. And even though they're small little things, if I am introducing each one, it could be that it kind of just makes it go a bit longer. What I could do is kind of mention at the start maybe who's going to be involved throughout the session, so people know what to expect, and I'll mention the order. And then maybe once that's done, because all the first 4 are pre-recorded, you can just go video, 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 video. Then Adam comes in at the end. Maybe we'll do it that way.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Right, so just take off these video boxes. Hide that. Okay.
So just to be clear,
go on.
Sorry, the only reason everybody's here is for Q&A, which may not happen. Is that right?
It seems so.
Okay.
So if we do manage to get through to a Q&A, this is the panel view, so everyone just turn their webcams on, and then questions are down below.
Yeah. It would be a shame not to have anyone there. I'll try and go really fast, but.
I mean, I was going to mention at the start, Adam, that we if we don't get to answer any questions, that we will try to answer them offline. And I know that was one of the options that was given in the conference. So I know it's not ideal, but at least we can get a transcript and get back to people with it, so that there's at least that option. But yeah, it's a bit tight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm the only one that can.
Quick an hour goes.
Well, yeah, no one else can speed up. Can't play the videos on 10% quicker.
We can try.
Go on, you then.
Can you hear me?
I can.
As liaison, I can copy and paste any messages from the Adobe Connect into the Hoover messages board, just in case there are some which I haven't managed to answer during the actual session. That'd be helpful.
Okay. There isn't time for questions, is there? So.
Okay.
Just so you know, Jeff, I know you're not obviously speaking much, but your mic is very quiet.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that any better?
Not really. You know, with the microphone button up here, there's a little drop-down arrow next to it. If you adjust microphone volume, you can turn it up. But I'm on 100% on my computer, and I still can't hear you. That sounded better.
Is that better now?
Yeah, that's much better, yeah.
Yeah, I put it on maximum now, so. Okay, great.
Okay, so if everyone is ready, let me just export the chat from earlier. And clear it. We'll start in this view with just Chris on, and then we'll play all the videos, and if people are needed, they'll just come on. Adam, your camera's much better today. What's
It is, isn't it? I don't know why it came on huge again. It's weird. It wasn't just me, was it? Steve from Vincent Wildlife Trust had the same.
Yeah.
issue earlier. Weirdness. Okay, so we're not needed until.
Will I need to manually adjust my camera, as in switch it on and off in between things, or will you be doing that, Adam, from the background?
I'll do it from the background.
All right. Okay. Fine.
Is Rose involved? Is she coming in just in case there's a Q&A?
She was going to try and come in case there were questions around her video. Yeah.
She's just coming. I'm just gonna make her a presenter. Just give her a quick brief. See, we've got to start very soon. Rose, if you're there.
Hiya.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So, as you know, most of the session, these presentations are pre-recorded. So you just need to be available if we're going to do a live Q&A at the end. All right.
Yep. No worries. I'll be here.
Leave your camera
Which is
off.
looking unlikely. Unless I speak double quick.
Right,
do you want me to cut down mine, Chris? Just really quickly. Do you want me to cut mine right down so that we get 3 minutes of Q&A?
It's up to you, Adam. I mean,
I can whiz through. I'm the only one that can do that because I'm the only one speaking live. So I can just say like, yeah, I can. I will. I'll try and go quicker. So I think it's just bad if we don't get any chance to interact at all. So I'll try and finish within say 6 minutes instead of the 10, so that they get 1 or 2 quick questions at the end.
Okay, fine.
Otherwise, everybody's wasting their time sort of being there for it, aren't they?
Mm. Okay.
Right then, Chris, camera on. Everyone else, camera off. Mute yourselves. Okay. Right, I'll turn my camera off and I'll just cap you in. As soon as 3, 2, 1, take a breath and start. Okay.
Okay.
Let's start recording. Record here. Okay, I'm letting everyone in. Stream's fine. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Hi there, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Lazo. I'm the local places.
Have we lost Chris?
Looks like we have.
I think so.
Do you want to just step in just to outline from what I understand? Unless Chris comes back. So there's a series of pre-recorded presentations. Chris is the Local Nature Partnership Cymru project coordinator, and there's a series of presentations pre-recorded, and then I'll be finishing off with a little live slot myself on Look Wales involvement. So presentations from and Adam might have to shout the order out. The other Adam in the background. We have I know we've got Chris first, and then Trevor, is it?
Yeah.
Yep. Trevor Theobald talking about Pembrokeshire. Here's Chris back. He can relieve me. See if he can hear. There we go. I tried to.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Apologies for that. I think my stream dropped out. So my name is Chris Lazo. I'm the Local Nature Partnerships Manager working for WCBA. Just want to welcome you to the Wales Biodiversity Partnership Conference and the Local Nature Partnerships Cymru Showcase. So you can ask questions throughout the live chat and they'll be picked up by the moderators at this time. You're welcome to ask questions in Welsh, as these will be translated. Further details of all the presentations and speakers' biographies can be found on the WOBA webpage, so I encourage you to register for the sessions and provide feedback by rating them. The sessions are being recorded and will be available afterwards through the WBP website. So we've got a number of pre-recorded sessions. So the first presentation will be mine, talking about the LNP work that we've been carrying out over the last year and our plans moving forward. Then we'll have Trevor Theobald, ecologist for Pembrokeshire County Council, talking about the Pembrokeshire Biodiversity Partnership. Then we'll have 2 short videos of some of the work that we're doing on the ground under the Local Places for Nature grants. So one will be from Lucy Arnold-Matthews, LNP coordinator for Monmouth and Newport, and Rose Rivera, LNP coordinator for Neath Talbot and RCT.
Okay, we'll go into Chris's presentation.
My name is Chris Lazo. I'm the project manager for LNP Cymru. I'm just going to do a presentation today to giving you a bit of an overview of the work that we're currently doing. So we call this presentation A Year in the Life of LNP Cymru, giving you a bit of a showcase of our history, what we're doing currently, and some of the partners involved as well. So LNP Cymru project is a Welsh Government funded collaboration between Wales Biodiversity Partnership, WCDA, local authorities, national park authorities, and the local environmental record centres, which aims to strengthen the number, resilience, and impact of local nature partnerships in Wales. So LNPs, hosted by local authorities, bring together cross-sector stakeholders to direct and deliver targeted conservation activities. They are successors to the local biodiversity action plan partnerships, which have had a history of over 20 years, and the project is building on these foundations and developing complete Wales-wide coverage. The LNP project maintains strong strategic and local links with National Resources Wales, facilitating knowledge exchange and aligning with policy developments, for example, area statements. NRW are also represented on the LNP Advisory Board and the Programme Board. So the project has provided dedicated LNP coordinators in those local authority and national park areas that required them. So that's 18 out of 25 areas, and provided capacity building support around engagement, volunteering, communications and impact measurement to strengthen existing and build new collaborations. Development of a national integrated impact framework for nature recovery and strategic oversight by a wider range of social, economic and cultural interests to facilitate new collaborations over the 3 years. So our goal is to cement a vibrant and effective and functional All Wales network of LNPs delivering compelling evidence-based narratives about the value of nature recovery and enabling more local actors from all sectors to participate in coordinated action and to recognise and enjoy the multiple benefits that it brings. So this infographic aims to demonstrate how the LNP project works. So the LNP coordinator role facilitates and coordinates the local nature partnership, is a source of nature expertise across the county, and is instrumental in facilitating work happening on the ground. At its heart, the LNP project is place-based, but is flexible in operating at site, ward, habitat connectivity level, local authority, joint local authority level, and all encapsulated in a Wales-wide nature network. So before the LNP project began in 2019, active nature partnership across Wales were vulnerable to funding cuts, and in some areas the local nature partnership was dormant. So this funding helped to bridge that gap, ensuring there was a partnership to serve every county across Wales. In most of these counties, you can now join your LNP, either as an active partner involved in the decision-making in your area, or by receiving regular updates from the partnership. So traditional members are organisations such as ENGOs and public sector authorities, but many LNPs have also businesses and private sector involved. Through the project, we hope to continue to reach out to businesses and non-traditional audiences in order to engage everyone in nature recovery. As the partnerships become more established, they are becoming central to biodiversity activity happening in the area. This graph shows how inquiries coming through to the LNP coordinators are increasing. So partners, businesses, authorities, and the public and individuals reach out to their LNP for many reasons, but inquiries tend to fall in 3 main categories. Specialist advice, so that could be a partner who is applying for funding and needs someone to read over their application, or link to national context and give it a strategic focus. Collaboration, in other words, to work together on a project or develop training. For awareness raising or networking, so as promoting funding, projects or campaigns. Sometimes all it takes is for the LNP to link 2 people or partners together for a really great project to happen. While LNPs provide that coordination role, they also get involved with action on the ground, and as well as feeding into the national agenda and inputting into strategic development. One key area LNPs can support nature recovery is through conducting site visits. So many landowners and farmers reach out to LNPs for support, creating a management plan for biodiversity. So despite lockdown, LNPs have been able to continue to provide this support and ensure management plans take into account locally relevant biodiversity. So LNPs also do a fair bit of public engagement, attending or running events, visiting and working with schools. And this activity is really starting to ramp up as local partnerships become more and more embedded. The other crucial part of their role is strategic and local influencing. This can mean sitting on working groups, such as the National Nature Recovery Action Plan, or working groups for pollinator action plans or area statements. Ensuring nature recovery is high on the agenda is one of the main priorities of the LNP project. LNPs also support projects by providing specialist advice to those running the projects, so 89 projects so far, or giving out small grants to enable targeted local action, so 65 funded so far. The LNP project also successfully received just over £2 million of funding through Welsh Government's Local Places for Nature scheme, which funded multiple capital projects in every county to improve nature recovery. So the Local Places for Nature Fund is a Welsh Government capital fund that aims to deliver environmental growth on your doorstep. This includes community-led activity, attending to the everyday places. So these may include new projects for community orchards, allotments, greening of public buildings, tiny forests, water fountains, habitat creation, etc. So all projects need to restore and enhance nature. They need to deliver environmental growth where people live, work, or access public services. They need to be delivered within this financial year, 2021, and it needs to deliver a capital asset that has a sustainable management plan for future maintenance. It needs to also demonstrate multiple benefits spanning environmental, social, economic, and cultural well-being. So at the moment, we have 75 capital projects being delivered this year via the LNPs. And on the slide, you can see some of the outputs of this work. So 86 places for nature have been restored and enhanced. There's been 40 pollinator improvements, 27 new green corridors have been created, 20 meadows and verges with new mowing practices have also taken place. It's important to remember that we're able to deliver on these projects because of LNP capacity on the ground. So LNPs have also been successful in obtaining preparatory grants this year to enable early work to take place, which will enable efficient capital delivery in 21-22. Also, a smaller revenue pot has also been made available, which is there to add capacity for delivery within this year and planning of capital projects for next year. Now I'm going to focus on 3 specific LNPs to showcase what the project has achieved over the last year. So firstly, we'll look at Gwynedd, which is a relatively new partnership. So this is Ellis. So Ellis Smits is the LNP coordinator for Gwynedd. So he joined the team in January 2020, at which point there was no local nature partnership in place. So from no partnership and no members this time last year, the Gwynedd LNP now has 27 members. So it consists of traditional members such as the NGOs, but Ellis has also sought to engage local people and communities by involving town and community councils and housing associations. Ellis has also been working with Snowdonia LNP and Anglesey LNP on a North West Wales partnership, following the success of something similar in North East Wales, known as BioNet. So North West Wales come together monthly currently to share learning and ideas and develop projects together. So Ellis spent a lot of his first few months in the role meeting partners, and so the proactive role in the early stages has resulted in more and more partners reaching out to him, enabling him to step back and take more of a coordination role. So he's receiving inquiries from a variety of topics, from improving green infrastructure at local train stations to improving biodiversity solutions for sewage companies. He's then able to make activity happen on the ground by facilitating collaboration between partners. For example, linking ENGOs with community groups with funding bids, and research students with local action. A great example of his facilitation role is the Be Friendly initiative he is currently working on. So in his capacity as LNP coordinator, he is the Be Friendly champion for Gwynedd. So he has plans to get as many schools in Gwynedd as possible on the Be Friendly scheme by the end of the school year. So to do this, he has linked in with Tir Amor Partnership and North Wales Wildlife Trust to plant trees to replace those lost to ash dieback disease, create wildflower meadows and allotments, and to support the new environmental segment of the curriculum. Another example is the work he did with Incredible Edible in Porthmadog, who are working with numerous groups and organisations, including a school, Tesco's and a leisure centre to set up a habitat corridor. So Ellis provided advice and support as well as funding for bilingual interpretation panels and benches for the community to relax and enjoy being in nature. He and the whole Gwynedd Biodiversity team also have great plans for the coming year, including working with the tourism industry in Gwynedd running and taking part in a series of events leading up to the environmental festival Gwylf Medi in September 2021, and scaling up the Bee Friendly project by greening the post-industrial towns of Gwynedd. So this slide focuses on the local places for nature capital works that Ellis and Gwynedd have been working on. So an example of this is the Gwynedd Habitat Recovery Project, which includes invasive non-native species removal, in this case Japanese knotweed, on the Barloyd River. Orchard creation and building works at Gwaith Poder, including bat and bird roosts, as seen in the picture, has now been made safe and cleared of asbestos. And also changing mowing practices on council land through meadow and pond creation. So Gwynedd was also successful in a preparatory grant funding application, which means they will receive funding to start some of the work necessary for the 21-22 funding application within this financial year. Through this, they will be funding a community toolkit for each administrative area of Gwynedd to enable communities to lease it for work on allotments, nature gardens, and eco-school activities. This will support their 21-22 Capital Works programme, Greening the Post-Industrial Towns of Gwynedd, whereby they hope to receive funding to create more wildflower meadows, community allotments across the county to improve biodiversity and enable people to access nature on their doorstep. Not only has Ellis been instrumental in local action on the ground, but his role also involves local and strategic influencing. So this year he sat on the assessment panels for Keep Us Tidy, Local Places for Nature grant scheme, and advised on heritage lottery bid applications. So this ensures that any local action that's successful in receiving funding in Gwynedd meets both local and national biodiversity priorities. He's also used his role to sit on other boards and influence their priorities. For example, he's a member of the Dyffryn Gwyth Partnership, which is the flood management of the Ogwen Valley, and the EcoBro Foundation, a community group working on practical steps in the areas of local food and local transport. He sits on the steering group of Incredible Edible Porthmadog, and is on the board of the Pwllheli Rotary Club. He's also recently delivered a workshop and sat on the panel of Peace Jam, which is a conference for young people to inspire them to change the world, spreading the LNP message to young people across Europe. This capacity to get involved in projects, to facilitate vital connections between people and partners, and to shape the steering of organisations throughout the county is crucial to the LNP project. Ellis's role has been recognised as so important within the council that they have funded an additional 2 days per week, enabling him to work full-time on the LNP. This is in less than a year of him starting his role. Now here's an example of an LNP which existed before the LNP Cymru project as a mechanism for area networking, but did not have capacity of funding to develop and deliver projects, which it does now. So this is about Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen LNP, which merged into one in 2017. So V is the LNP coordinator for Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen. She's worked in the third and public sector for over 20 years, developing and delivering projects which connect people to nature. As well as experience of nature conservation, she's developed expertise in the benefits of contact with nature for human health and well-being, which is the focus of a PhD she's currently working on through Cardiff University. V is delivering the last session here at the conference on Friday, looking at personal resilience for environmental practitioners, so be sure to check that out. So V joined the LNP team in March 2020, but she was a member of Torfaen LNP for 12 years prior. Membership now stands at around 75 members, with around 30 coming together for decision making. Those members include the usual players and locally important figures, as well as community councils and housing associations. Since starting, V has particularly been sought after for specialist advice. So this has been support with funding applications or guidance on developing wildlife projects. Members of the public and of community groups have also been able to reach out to V with issues concerning them around mistreatment of wildlife. So V is also working on a hedgehog project after a concerned member of the public got in touch to discuss how they can work together to raise awareness across the borough. So previously this member of the public had tried social landlords and been passed around departments within the council. So V's role is crucial here as she ensures things get done and issues get sorted, either through the LNP or by linking people, partners or projects together. So due to the nature of her background and experience, V's role also has been important to get volunteering opportunities off the ground. She's able to link community groups with council staff so they can work together on conservation projects. Through the LNP, V has given out project funding to various partners in order to support them to carry out local action on the ground. In these past few months, she has funded projects for enhancement of meadows, woodland, wildflower verges, hedgerows and wetland sites. In the picture, the Pontypool Park Friends were removing litter, leaves and silt from the deer pond. This helped the local biodiversity and they were able to see immediate results as ducks had moved in by the very next day. Within Local Places for Nature, Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen received funding for 4 projects this year, which covered verges, hedging and walling, managing meadows, and wilding Torfaen, which included areas of low biodiversity value managed for wildlife, including tree planting, wetland creation, increased wildflowers, overall contributing to networks of habitat across the county borough and reducing fragmentation. So their preparatory grant will fund work which will be completed this year in order to prepare the ground for the 21-22 funding application. So in Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen, this will be funding tablets, training and updated GIS layers to build on this year's grassland work. The mapping software will enable them to create management plans for sites so that teams can look at them whilst on site and know which areas to cut at what time. By making cut and collect more effective and efficient, they're then hoping to roll it out to more sites next year. One of the big achievements of Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen's LMP this year was the creation of a working group within the council to focus on changing grassland management practices. Members of the biodiversity team had been trying to set this group up for years, but with being in place to coordinate this effort, as well as the funding and machinery brought through Local Places for Nature, this provided the crucial link to get staff across the council on board. So operational staff chose the machinery which they felt best suited the various landscapes they work in. They were able to demonstrate the equipment before committing. This ensured buy-in for the working group and behaviour change in terms of managing the land for biodiversity. Changing management practices within the council has had a knock-on effect within the community, as now other businesses and community councils are coming forward to inquire about cut and collect on their land. V is currently involved in a project with a community council to turn a former play area to annual cut and collect meadow, and they have also asked if they can have more wildflower verges in their patch. V has also been working to develop local nature champions who will recruit volunteers, provide training and provide skills development to support practical conservation in communities. Once COVID restrictions ease, it is hoped that there will be a great way to coordinate and maximise the volunteer effort for nature conservation across the 2 counties. So now we come to an example of a long-standing partnership which existed well before the LMP project began, so 20 years this October. And using Pembrokeshire as an example, I'm hoping to show how the LMP has added value where partnerships already existed. So Ant Rogers has been the Pembrokeshire Nature Partnership Officer for 8 years and counting. So PMP membership currently stands at 21 and includes a wide range of actors, from traditional members such as Buglife, National Trust, to the tourism industry, country land and business associations. There's over 800 on the mailing lists to be kept updated with partnership information and activity. So being established in this role means that he has lots of experience, knowledge and connections to continue to push for higher recognition of biodiversity and nature recovery. Locally, he sits on working groups for Pembrokeshire Council Local Development Plan and the National Park Recreational Management Plan. He's the Bee Friendly Champion for Pembrokeshire and sits on the Keep Wales Tidy Assessment Panel for West Wales. He's also in the Pembrokeshire Sustainable Agriculture Network and part of the Pembrokeshire Wildfire Group. Nationally, he's part of the Action Plan for Pollinators Task Force. He sits on the PSB Climate Change Risk Assessment Group, the Welsh Government NRAP Refresh Group and NRAP Ecosystem Resilience Working Group. He's also on the Project Board and Advisory Board of the LMP project. The most important way in which the LMP project has been of benefit in Pembrokeshire is giving the partnership 3 years of security regarding funding. So despite celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, prior to this project, much of Ant's time was spent fighting the corner for next year's funding. Another one of the most important ways in which the LMP project has been of benefit in Pembrokeshire is by enabling the partnership to develop deeper collaborations with partners. With access to a small pot of money, the partnerships can leverage joint funding and resources to secure integrated outcomes for people and nature. So here is an overview of all the projects Pembrokeshire LMP funded last year. 17 projects, grants of just under 20,000, bringing in almost double that figure in match funding. It's not large sums of money, but really quick wins for biodiversity and nature recovery. It demonstrates flexible funding with a quick turnaround. So looking at some of these projects in a little bit more detail, you have, for example, the brown hair streak monitoring. So that's paying for volunteer mileage, which enabled 350 hours work of monitoring this threatened species. It's very labour intensive, but the data wouldn't exist without the volunteers, as there's no national monitoring programme. This then informs the action plan to protect the species. Then you have the Wildlife Trust South and West Wales. So that was fencing to enable conservation grazing, an example of classic habitat management with a key partner. Stitch in Time. So this was about area clearance to allow volunteers to spend 80 hours pulling Himalayan balsam, so around 20,000 small plants, and it would not have been possible without the area having been cleared first. The Coastal Education Pack, which was paying for translation costs of this pack, used to promote engagement and care of the coastal margins. It's particularly used in schools and as part of the curriculum. Plant Pembrokeshire, which paid for 1,300 trees and guards for a plant scheme. So it was planting a tree for every child born in Pembrokeshire each year until a thriving woodland is created. So low cost but huge value, and connected to important habitats and will prevent future flooding and reduce soil loss. The project demonstrated strong partnership working between LNP, T Coid Charity, local farm business, NHS Health Board, and acted as a catalyst for further change. The new woodland will be promoted as a place for new parents and families to visit, and NHS staff will engage new parents in discussions around sustainable parenting. There's a similar picture for 20 and 21 so far, so just short of 10,000 in project funds given out. But if the opportunity for more comes around, there is a bank of projects which could be funded quite quickly. This shows strong partnership working in the area. So far, Pembrokeshire has already brought in over 6,000 in match funding, and that's before the work has been carried out. So some of these examples, I believe, demonstrate flexibility of funding. The Wolf Castle tree planting is a plant scheme just mentioned. So volunteers were supposed to come in and do aftercare on the newly planted trees, but due to COVID restrictions, this could not happen. So the funding pot allowed that these trees, they could be protected by paying a contractor to spray weeds to protect them. It was not ideal, but it ended up protecting the asset. Open water enhancement, so this money paid to defilter ponds and recreate a key habitat in the beautiful nature reserve of Llangollen Fen. The marsh fritillaries, similar to the brown hair streak monitoring previously mentioned, so paid for a desk-based study to give strategic direction and management plan for marsh fritillaries going forward. On top of the project pot, which the LNP can give out in grants, the LNP officer is also able to offer advice and support to development and delivery of project partners and projects. So some of the projects that ANT has been supporting this year has been the Newport Environment and Action Group. So ANT has been supporting the group to submit an application to the National Park Sustainable Development Fund to fund local actions such as tree planting. Growing Better Connections, so this is a landscape regeneration project in northeast Pembrokeshire, focusing on ecological connectivity and resilience. So ANT previously supported an SMS bid to employ project officers and a manager, which was successful, and he continues to advise them now and often facilitate collaborations between the group and key stakeholders. So the picture shown is from an apple juicing day run by the group. It's building resilience in catchments. So ANT is on the steering group and working group. Welsh Government feasibility studies into nutrient trading and plans to reduce polluters. And Bug Farms is a private company which promotes dung beetles and invertebrate engagement. So ANT supported the creation of an edible 3-acre field to showcase nature-friendly farming and support beeline and pollinator-friendly schemes. So off the back of that, the Bug Farm and LNP worked together to write a successful capital funding bid to look at marsh fritillary management. So LNP has the capacity and resource to support this kind of journey. Through Local Places for Nature, Pembrokeshire received funding for capital projects. This was both for the local authority and National Park Authority. Things like Pembroke Mill Pond, so that was increasing the biodiversity of the mill pond through green management. Green Team, so this was purchasing a lockable trailer with tools and equipment for a new green team of volunteers. County Hall Wilding, replacing 200 metres squared of sterile grassland around the country hall with wildflower turf. Parade woodland improvements. Riverside pocket parks, that was about creating a pocket park, so this area is alongside the main car park to improve otter cover through sensitive clearance. Creation of woodland and INNSS free assets, so buying a quad and mower to manage a key wetland habitat on the floodplain of the old mill grounds. Haverfordwest Castle Passage. So the Castle Passage is currently a main link from the Castle car park to Haverfordwest High Street, And the idea is to have the area behind the passage landscaped with native species and the wall to be lower to allow views of the castle behind. And also the Haverfordwest Pollinators project. So these are various activities including installation of Swifton House Martin boxes on council buildings. And as mentioned, Pembrokeshire National Park Authority also has a number of projects under Local Places for Nature. So these include the fritillaries at Trefach, Lower Meadow Enhancement at Castle Henlys, Coiber Bay invasives, that's around removing Himalayan balsam impacting on the Wales coast path at Coiber Bay. Heritage orchards, so 60 young fruit trees grafted from heritage orchards and upskilling both National Park volunteers and MenCap volunteers at Stackpole walled gardens and the techniques associated with the grafting of fruit trees. And Manabia Meadows, which is restoring 0.25 acres or hectares, sorry, of wildflower meadow at Manabia, which is in poor condition due to its small size and awkward slope, using a mini flail mower. So I hope that this presentation has given you an example of how different LNPs operate, how they adapt to the context of their community and their landscape and the skills and knowledge of the coordinator. We believe that together it makes for a well-rounded network. Our future plans include wanting to increase our work in supporting partners, especially including community groups and volunteers. An interactive project map to allow easy navigation of work being delivered across Wales by each LNP is also being worked on. We are further planning for more Pan-Wales capital projects for next year, and we're working on increasing the variety of partners within each LNP. So there is a local nature partnership in every area across Wales, each uniquely placed to take action for nature at the local level. Your local nature partnership is a one-stop shop for nature expertise, nature projects and activities taking place in your area. There are lots of ways you can get involved and give nature a helping hand, from joining the conversation online to becoming a member of your LNP. We have regular fortnightly LNP meetings, so if you would like to link in with our work, we would gladly offer you an opportunity to do so via this platform. Also, please visit our website, lnp.cymru, for more information, and you can also find us on Twitter at lnpcymru. We would love to hear from you. The Local Nature Partnership Network in Wales is uniquely positioned to be an integral part of a green recovery. It is a multi-partner network of capacity, knowledge, training, public engagement, volunteering activities, collaboration, and practical action for nature. The activities and actions LNPs facilitate, enable, and undertake for species and habitats take place collaboratively. In addition, citizen outreach through volunteering, nature events, and wildlife recording have been a significant element of LNP activities. We would like to see a Wales-wide network of local nature partnerships with nature recovery expertise in every local authority and national park to build a sustainable nature recovery network in Wales with the full participation of civil society. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, welcome to what will be a canter through the last 20 years of the Pembrokeshire Biodiversity Partnership, now renamed the Pembrokeshire Nature Partnership. I became involved in 1999 and we were able to launch our LBAP in October 2000, the first in Wales to be launched. We soon realised that there was a lot to do and we were able to employ Bethan Cox here as the Biodiversity Implementation Officer here in Haverfordwest Farmers Market, distributing leaflets for Wales Biodiversity Week. Along with Sea Trust, Bethan and myself did some Sea Watch activities here at Strumble Head, and on the occasion when I wasn't there, Bethan and others were very lucky to see humpback whale go past Strumble Head. The implementation of the LBAP obviously had specific projects that were thrown up to enable us to understand how the species and habitats were doing. One very successful project was the Otter Survey, where we had the help of Jeff Lyles and the Wildlife Trust and various other organisations to train up science folk to help us understand where otters were moving through the catchments. We also realised that kestrels were not having a particularly good time of it, so we had a system of putting up monitoring boxes to enable us to help the kestrels. 2007 and 2008, I was asked to help deliver the biodiversity duty course at Plas Tanabulch to show how Pembrokeshire had been instigating its partnership approach and how we were then implementing the ELB. Communication is absolutely key, and we started a partnership newsletter which still continues today, along with a web presence, and now we have Facebook pages as well. We started to realise that some species were declining, and green woodpecker was one in particular, and quite a common bird 30 odd years ago in the county, now lost as a breeding bird, and very, very infrequent records. But where there are losers, there are winners, and we were soon looking to spot harlequin ladybirds. 2008 was again the first record in Pembroke. The partnership supported, among others, the Pembrokeshire Fungus Recording Network, who were particularly interested in grassland fungi, and here's Bethan and myself looking at some wax caps in a cemetery. But it was quite interesting that the pink ballerina wax cap was on the original 90s UK BAP list, and when people started looking for it, they started finding it. So the importance of records and recording is paramount, without a doubt. But we soon found, or UK-wide found, that these were a lot more common than they first thought of. So they were actually then removed from the UK list and the Welsh list. To help aid awareness and interest in grassland fungi, the production of this booklet was aided by the Biodiversity Partnership and has proved very successful since then, and it's gone through, I think, about 4 editions so far. In 2009, again, we were supported to bring across to the UK one of Europe's wax cap experts, Yves Arnolds. He's the one with the beard, just in case you didn't know. I think Jane is there looking at a magic mushroom, actually as part of the grassland assemblage. But he was able to give us the raft of his experience in understanding a little bit more about the needs of wax caps in the county. Notwithstanding our importation of experts, we obviously used and were able and lucky enough to draw on the Welsh expertise. So here we have Ray Woods talking about the Lobarian communities of lichens in Stackpole National Nature Reserve. And here's one of the species there, lungwort, Lobaria pulmonaria. So from the sublime to the ridiculous, here's Bethan Cox in front foreground left, forcing me into a puddle whilst we are undertaking a Wildlife on Your Patch survey with a local community, in fact my local community. And the idea of this Wildlife on Your Patch was to enthuse peoples and locals about what was important in terms of the natural history in their area. And in fact, there is a bit of logic to this standing in the puddle lark. This particular tractor rut had 3-lobed water crowfoot in it, so I was doing a bit of squelchy management to try and aid its continuance. A report was then done we did about 30 different communities or villages with associated areas, and they're all still reports that are available to the communities. During that process, the search for species at different times of the year then resulted in brown-banded carnaby being the purple dot in the middle of the Pembrokeshire map there. That was my garden, and so I was lucky enough to do that. But we'd been working quite with Sinead Lynch from Bumblebee Conservation Trust, again delivering citizen science projects, and obviously from Sinead's point of view, signing up bumblebee surveyors. This one's at Scolton Manor. As part of that process, I was able to influence a little bit on the planting schemes within the council, and so we had areas of what would have been formal planting dedicated over to pollinator plantings. Here there's an excellent crop of California poppies, not natives I know, but they are excellent for pollinators along with other cornflowers and mallows. We undertook a state of wildlife to see how wildlife was doing in 2011. So it wasn't a particularly great picture, but then a lot of species are quite difficult to get a handle on in terms of their absolute ability to do well in the county. But one very interesting species, I think a very charismatic species, that we were asked to go and look at. We were contacted by Kew, who had some old records of willow blister, Cryptomyces maximus, for the Dowrog Common, and we were asked to go and see if we could find it again. Not only did we find it at the Dowrog, but we found 8 other places in the county where we were able to find it, and it was then listed actually as part of the process under the IUCN World's 100 Rarest Things in the World. And at that time, Pembrokeshire had 9 out of the 10 sites known in the world. So by 2014, Ant Rogers, who I'm sure most of you will know, had taken up the post of Biodiversity Implementation Officer. And I really put this slide in to show the breadth of the projects that at that stage the partnership has been involved with. So from a county-wide or a mid-Pembrokeshire rural revitalisation project to involvement with the local records centre, the Square Challenge, which was to try and get people to go and look out for records within a 1 kilometre square where there were no records, the Crawfish Survey, the wax caps, local nature walks, brown hair streaks, invasives, and with the National Park Heathland Management. We were also then contacted by Kew about another quite interesting species. John Hudson managed to find a site in Pembrokeshire for hazel gloves, and so we set about looking for them, and that's what the beast is. It is a hyperparasite, so it feeds on another fungus, hazel glue or glue fungus, which is fairly widespread. You can find it in most woodland areas, woodland edge, where there's hazel. So do keep an eye out. If you find the glue, keep going back and having a look around, see whether you might be lucky enough to find some hazel glove. So the red dots were up to the 2019 sites that we were able to find, and the 3 orange ones are ones that I'd found this year. So added to the database of 3 new sites. 2014 also saw Pembrokeshire hit the news headlines when there was a weather event that caused a bus to be swamped with a wave and pushed all the shingle from Newgale Beach and shattered a lot of the windows and caused a little bit of damage both to the bus and to some of the occupants. Nobody was seriously hurt. But increasing weather events are of interest to the natural world and play an important part in changes to biodiversity. Not least of all, my son here, who's 6'4", is pointing out the loss of sand from Newgale Beach following the storm. So there was well over 3 foot of sand had disappeared. You can see from the bare rock there where it hasn't been colonized by barnacles, limpets and other crustaceans. So that was bare rock where the sand had disappeared from. Put this slide in to remind me that geodiversity is part of biodiversity, so we mustn't forget the rocks and the fossils and stuff. These are graptolites, one of the main places for them in Pembrokeshire is Aberystwyth in the Blue Lagoon in the quarry there. Purple broom rape made an appearance also in the summer, a Mediterranean summer of 2014, and this is a species that is partly parasitic on yarrow, and this is a bit of an amenity grassland that it last flowered about 30 years ago, well 30 years from 2014 anyway, and then for 2 years running it decided to pop up 2014 and 15, but we can see from its UK distribution map that it's quite an unusual plant. And so is this a harbinger of more activity for Mediterranean species as our climate warms? Well, who can tell? We need to keep recording, keep our local record centre well stocked with records. Invasive non-native species, along with the 3 marine SACs that Pembrokeshire is involved with and the Marine Conservation Society, we put on a invasive species course for the marine environment. That year as well, the partnership were involved in the production of this report, which was produced in 2015 on the Castlemartin Peninsula. So we were looking at how the partners could get together, look at landscape scale projects, and they, along with the local record centre, we developed a trial mapping system as a planning tool, and that's since developed into the land use planning tool that I know several areas in Wales and so several local record centres now promote as a really good tool for professionals to be able to use. Encouraging awareness of issues to our members of Parliament and Welsh Assembly members and those in areas of power. Here we have the Pems Marine SAC and the Skoma Marine Conservation Zone boat out with some worthies to highlight the issues. Skoma and Skocom and Ramsey Grassholm are very, very important for seabirds. Skoma in particular, with its population of Manx shearwaters, Skoma and Skocom combined. But on Skoma there had been some really interesting developments with the aid of technology. So we have data loggers, or sorry, should I say universities have been putting on data loggers. So the Edward Grey in Oxford, Sheffield, Gloucester, Plymouth have all been doing data logging experiments with as technology has allowed. But the fascinating thing here is that a Manx shearwater travelled 7,750 kilometres in 6.5 days. And this was just unknown before we had this technology for using data log. So 2016, we did an update of the state of wildlife in Pembrokeshire. Still not a fabulous picture, still a lot of stuff that needs to be considered and more work to be done. We were also, as a partnership, able to support the PEMS Fungus Recording Network to trial a citizen science-based development of a thing called Bento Lab to look at DNA. So the fungus recording were one of 10 citizen science and or educational establishments in the world that was supported to do this initial trial with the Bento Lab, and we were able to set up close links with Gareth Griffith in Aberystwyth University. So we do some of the first stages of the DNA process and then pay Aberystwyth University to do the final bit. So we concentrated on a particular species, the Hygrocybe conica, the blackening waxcap, and of the sites that we were able to find in that year, the blackening waxcap sites that had previously been shown to be one species, we were able through DNA work to find out that we actually had 4 different species. The green dot in the middle there is this one, which is in my garden. Rather magnificent beast. So 2018, we launched the Nature Recovery Action Plan for Pembrokeshire. Again, working on the partnership approaches. Here's Ant delivering some of the stuff for the Wales Biodiversity Partnership in September 2018. I'm sure a lot of you will know Ant through his working with the Wales Biodiversity Partnership, as well as the sterling work that he does for PEMS. So just recently there's been a lot hitting the headlines. Here we have David Attenborough, and in October on the front of the Radio Times saying, how do we save the planet? It's not about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves. So very much a case of understanding the ecology and the biodiversity and how we are all interlinked. The COVID process has certainly, I think, made more people aware of the importance of their environment around them, their local areas. So I mentioned before about recording, the fact that the local Environmental Record Centre app is available. Ours is the WBIC. So get out there and get recording, send your record in. So a couple of quick records for my lockdown. I was able to find date waxcap this year, which was a very nice find. Haven't seen one of those before. I'd had a glorious privet hawk moth in the garden. Again, only one other record I've had of privet. They say insanity is hereditary, you get it from your children, but I think the reverse is probably true for my 2 boys who caught the bug, and so here they are looking at otter spraints under a bridge, and our walks always generally end up with some foraging around looking for signs of something or another. So what next? Might we have stork? Who knows? Our certain challenge is to protect and enhance the biodiversity of Pembrokeshire. There are a lot of pressures on all organisations to maintain their responsibilities, but it is our duty wherever possible to get out there and make sure that the growth is there for our children. Sometimes the wildlife is all around us and it's sometimes not so easy to see, but we just need to be out there and looking. Last slide is to encourage people to keep records. I keep a sketchbook diary, which aids me in filling in my reports to send the records in. So get out there, enjoy it, record it, and send your records in. Thank you.
Hello. You may have seen in the chat there that we are too short on time to show the videos, so I'm going to go straight into my presentation, which was the only live one on this little segment. So I'm just going to very briefly cap off by talking about the local nature partnerships and how the local environmental record centres are working with the project. So I'm Adam Rowe from SUREC, one of the 4 local record centres in Wales. I talked about the lurks yesterday, so I'm not going to go into that in any detail now, other than to say there they are. There are 4 of us, and we work very closely together under this umbrella organisation, Local Environmental Record Centres Wales. And as LNP Cymru is a national project, it's Lurk Wales, which is the partner in that project itself, with the 4 lurks delivering the local projects. When putting together the initial LNP Cymru project bid, we put together a Lurk Wales offer, which outlines some of the strands of work which we wanted to do to engage with the local nature partnerships and the coordinators. So I'm going to go through those in a little less detail than I'd originally planned. Lurks have the job of engaging with their local nature partnerships, and it means we have traditionally been spread very thin. In the South East Wales region where I'm based, we now have 10 LMPs. We used to have 12 local biodiversity partnerships, but it does mean we're spread too thin to fully engage with those partnerships until now, when the funding through the LNP Cymru project has allowed us to sort of attend more meetings and get stuck in. And providing data and services is one of the main things that we want to do as sort of new work through this project. And so we've put together a little suite of products which we can provide the local nature partnerships, including priority species audits of Section 7 species, working with local species experts to identify local priority species lists, which can then be taken into account in the new local nature recovery action plans, and data gap analysis. This is a quick example, which I don't expect you to be able to read, of a Section 7 species audit, and this one was undertaken for the LNPs in Gwent through the separate Greater Gwent, Resilient Greater Gwent project, but we're hoping to complete these audits for the rest of South Wales, and they've already been done for West Wales. Whizzing through. Providing training in recording and species identification is a big part of what local record centres do, and each year we'll have a series of presentations on introducing recording and species identification in each of the LERCs. We did start the programme of face-to-face training for the LNPs, but then of course COVID came along. You'll notice the one and only event we did in South East Wales was on the 13th of March, which was pretty much most people's last working day before we went into work from home and lockdown. So COVID forced everything onto Zoom, and since the summer we've been providing introduction to wildlife recording sessions online via Zoom, and we're shortly providing those for individual LNPs as well. I mentioned Wales Garden Bioblitz in the Lurk slot yesterday, so I won't go into that again now, but suffice to say it was the most prolific day of wildlife recording ever, and that was a key part of Wales Nature Week, and it was our time in that was funded through the LNP Cymru project. Just finishing off my very brief slot now, so talking of the 4 evidence-driven regional pilot projects which we Lurks have offered to the LNP Cymru project. And there are 4 across Wales over the 3 years of the LNP Cymru project. So year 1, this was a further development of the tool that Trevor just mentioned in his video by West Wales Biodiversity Information Centre. So they've produced an online web mapping tool for the whole of the West Wales region now, which allows partners to access simple information on key species, habitat data, and then habitat suitability maps and overall biodiversity value maps, and these can all be contextualized with land ownership and designation layers. So just to show one quick example, this is the otter habitat suitability layer, which which shows red areas being the most suitable for otters, going down to dark blue for less suitable habitat. And what you can see on the left are all the different layers that are included in this West Wales land use planning tool, including flood risk, which was a new addition for the region-wide tool. I should make it clear it was originally developed for Pembrokeshire only and has been expanded to the whole of the West Wales region through this LNP Cymru project. The second project is in my patch in Subrec, where we're working with Swansea Local Partnership on a project called Making Sense of Ecosystem Resilience at the local level. And as you all know, all the public authority partners in LNPs have a duty under the Environment Act to maintain and enhance biodiversity and the resilience of ecosystems. But we identified the fact that it was difficult at the local level to make sense of that ecosystem resilience. So we decided to try and produce local maps to inform conservation decision making and then ultimately nature recovery. This is just a quick snapshot of a project area that we're looking at just to the northwest of Swansea, and you'll see the national curve data, as it's known, maps ecosystem resilience to 1 kilometre square, which is very good at the national level, but it doesn't provide enough detail to inform local decisions. And so what we're currently in the midst of working on is getting down to a finer scale and using the data that's held at the LURCs to map species diversity and all the other attributes of ecosystem resilience, as in diversity, extent, condition, and connectivity. So there's using the Subrec data to identify areas of species diversity, high species diversity, and then semi-natural habitat diversity. And these will be layered with data on site condition and connectivity to produce overall ecosystem resilience maps. Just very briefly finishing off, 2 more projects to come, one in BIS working with one in Paris working with Biodiversity Information Service, the Paris LNP, looking at developing a suite of local priority species lists, and then Cofnod in North Wales will be working with BioNet in North East Wales, the LNP in North East Wales, to build on some of the work that's been done in West Wales, looking at habitat suitability mapping. And just to summarise, our participation in the LNP Cymru project has allowed us to forge closer working relationships between LURCs and LNPs, and allowing the LNPs to make more use of the expertise and data in the LERCs. It's enabled us to work with communities to help them become better equipped with the skills required to record wildlife, to turn their sightings into records, and to contribute to the evidence base. And then ultimately to ensure that LNP actions and priorities are well informed and evidence driven, so that their nature recovery plans are well informed. That's me done very quick, and I hope we now might have a few seconds for Q&A. If anybody else is joining, Adam could promote any other speakers. Do we have time?
Thank you very much, Adam, for the presentation. At the moment, we are a bit tight for time, but we have answered all the questions that have appeared in the chat so far. You can submit further questions through the Woba app as well, and we'll make sure we get back to each one of you. I left my email address in the chat as well, so please feel free to reach out to me directly or through the website if you want to get in touch or find more information about the LNP project. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Thanks for all of you for attending. Hope you found it really useful. Just to remind you that you can find lots more information on the conference Woba platform if you need it. And please provide us with your feedback on the sessions via the rate session button on the Woba agenda, which is on each session, on each of the information pages as well. Again, thank you all very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
That's towards the end, so we have time. You're welcome to ask questions in English or in Welsh, as suits you. We have plenty of details about the presentations and the speakers on the Hoover webpage. Please do go look at that, register for any of the sessions, and also provide feedback by rating the sessions you've attended. All sessions will be recorded and they'll be available on the WBP website to view afterwards. In this session now we have 4 speakers with us. We have Alison Kitchener from Welsh Government, who's going to talk about local places for nature. And we're also joined by Catherine Thomas, Elliot Waters and Dr. Laura Jones from the National Botanic Garden of Wales, who are going to talk about the Biophilus Wales project. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first presenter, which is Alison, to talk about local places for nature. So thank you, Alison.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much indeed, Kerry. As Kerry said, my name is Alison Kitchener. I'm the Programme Manager for Local Places for Nature in the Welsh Government. Local Places for Nature is a new programme in 2021. The First Minister asked us to create a programme that would enable communities to create nature on your doorstep. It was extremely timely because, of course, with COVID, we've all recognised how important it is to access nature close to where we live, work and access public services. So we created Local Places for Nature to focus on 3 main areas: areas of deprivation, urban and peri-urban areas, and areas with little or no access to nature, recognising that in some cases, people living in rural areas have little or no access to nature because they can't access the land around them. So those are the 3 fundamental premises of Local Places for Nature. Within that, we are looking to implement modest measures that make an impact locally. The First Minister is keen to see action by local groups and community groups who make an impact on biodiversity close to where they live. So we have these areas that we would like projects to focus on. As you can see, there's quite a wide range of areas that can be undertaken. You've heard quite a lot already about mowing practices, changing mowing practices across local authority and the wider public service, increasing pollinators more widely. We're interested in local tree planting. We're of course not trying to usurp the National Forest or anything like that. These days, very much a local, very small scale action. But of course, the idea is to underpin some of our wider programmes, such as restoring the Natura sites and creating the National Forest across Wales. So as you can see, there's quite a wide range of areas that projects can focus on. The rationale behind Local Places for Nature is very simple. The idea is that if people engage with nature, they come to appreciate it and value it, and they are more likely to support our wider programmes such as the National Forest and the sites and our work and expenditure on those areas. We would like people to engage with nature also for the well-being that it provides them. And the other principle is that the public sector will lead by example. You'll see from the programmes that we're delivering, and you've heard a lot from Chris Lazo already this afternoon, that the public sector can take a real lead in demonstrating how Wales can restore and enhance nature locally. You've heard from Chris already today, but Local Places for Nature runs through 3 what we call scheme managers. It's not a traditional programme whereby Welsh Government offers a grant scheme. We delegate that responsibility to 3 scheme managers. Now, the idea is that Local Places for Nature is a bottom-up programme that organisations come forward with their ideas. So we have 3 scheme managers. The first, obviously, are the local nature partnerships. They are an invaluable source of action and delivery across Wales. Rather than having a competitive process, we give each LNP an allocation. So they then are free to set up a plan that meets the local places for nature principles that I've described already, but fits with their local area, because as we know, an area like Merthyr has very different needs when it comes to restoring and enhancing nature compared with somewhere like Pembrokeshire. So each LNP is free to create a plan that fits with the local nature partnership principles. And this year they've gone ahead and implemented those plans. You've seen some earlier on, and I'll be talking about those in more detail in a moment. But those, of course, are our statutory sector, and so we wanted to ensure that all organisations have the opportunity to access funding. So we've created an innovative partnership with the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who are already a grant provider across Wales. And we're working together to offer capital grants between 10 and 50,000 to any community organisation that wishes to apply. Obviously, they have to be constituted and have a bank account and have a degree of organisation and management to access that sort of funding. But the National Lottery Heritage Fund are already giving out grants across Wales to take forward projects. Now, both of those two require a significant element of organisation and management in order to access those programmes. So Keep Wales Tidy provides a third element, and it's quite different to the other two. Applicants receive a prepaid package of plants, tools and expertise to help them deliver their own local place to nature. Keep Wales Tidy have starter packages which are very small in nature. All the community group needs to do is have a group of volunteers, get permission from the landlord and or the landowner, and then to agree to maintain the local place for nature for at least 5 years after the project is completed. This makes it incredibly simple for very small, unconstituted community groups to come together and to start to create places for nature on their doorstep. There's a second set of projects which are called development packages. They're larger, but they work on exactly the same principle. The community group that applies receives all of the materials, all of the resources and the tools they need to create their place for nature. So those can be butterfly gardens, community growing projects, and butterfly gardens. There's a range of them. I'll give you the web address at the end of the presentation. So these are a very different way of delivering local places for nature. So as you can see, the three different scheme managers operate in completely different ways. They're not in competition with each other. They work very much in collaboration. So sometimes National Lottery, for example, might suggest an organisation perhaps might be better accessing one of the Keep Wales Tidy packages first in order to gain some skills and knowledge before they embark on a project on their own. So the three work very much together and exchange information. We've already heard from Chris that some of the local nature partnership coordinators sit on the assessment panels like Keep Wales Tidy and for the National Lottery to make sure we have learning across the different schemes and to make sure that projects don't overlap or are too close together or that sort of thing. So that's the way that the scheme operates. So this is our first year in 2020-21. We started from a standing start about this time last year, and so all credit goes to the local nature partnership coordinators who've done a great job of creating their plans, to Keep Wales Tidy who are delivering across Wales, and to the National Lottery who are funding projects across Wales. So we have 600 capital projects currently running. You've heard about some of them today. It's quite nice to see local places for nature popping up in various people's project presentations, because that's the idea, that the money is distributed across Wales to as many community groups as possible. And we've got a budget of about 7 million going across scheme managers. So Keep Wales Tidy are delivering about 550 of the projects. That's because there's an awful lot of those starter projects that I was talking to you about. They've delivered about 300 already. If you'd like to know where they are, go to the Keep Wales Tidy website, and there's a fantastic interactive map that will tell you where all of the projects are across Wales, and you can click on it and find out, see a picture and a brief description of what's happening. There'll be 45 of the larger development projects completed by Christmas, and about 80 of them delivered by the end of the financial year. So there's a tremendous amount of delivery going on there with Keep Wells Tidy. Adam, would you be able to show the video now? If everyone could just bear with me for a moment. We're going to show you a short video of a Keep Wells Tidy project in Cardiff that works with residents of a small community living in a development run by a housing association in Cardiff. So we're just waiting. There we are. Thank you, Adam. We'll just wait for the presentation to reload. Thank you very much, Adam. I hope that gave you a flavour of the scale of the local places for nature that Keep Wells Tidy are delivering. The fact that you could see the volunteers there taking part in creating their own local place for nature. You saw that they received all of the tools and equipment that they needed, and the gentleman at the front of the last photograph was the coordinator that helped them deliver that project. So to imagine that there are 550 of those going on in communities across Wales. The National Lottery have funded 10 projects already, with more in the pipeline. They're generally about £30,000, and the communities are getting on and delivering those. And finally, as you know, the local nature partnerships have been working hard this year on their plans. Across the local nature partnerships, we have 46 plans in place that are being delivered to the tune of about £2.5 million. I know that you've had a presentation already, but I just wanted to highlight to you for local nature partnerships. There's no favouritism here. They're all doing a tremendous job, but I just wanted to show you the variety of projects that are taking place. So all of the local nature partnerships have been asked to green the public service estate. That's to say they need to look at their land and buildings and to see how they can introduce or reintroduce biodiversity. So you can see that some of them are creating wildflower meadows in around their public buildings in Anglesey. In Cardiff, there's going to be 2 green walls installed on public buildings. One of them is a library. Merthyr, as you've heard earlier, are installing cut and collect machines to change their mowing practices on their public land, and Wrexham are doing similar. Now, the second set of plans are about nature on your doorstep. This is where local nature partnerships can really take any of those themes that I've identified earlier on in the presentation and identify what is most important to them in restoring and enhancing nature. So you can see, again, there's some that are buying machinery to change their mowing practices. But in Merthyr, you can see they've taken a play area that was pretty much unusable and are changing it into a place for nature. And then in Wrexham, they are introducing canopy cover and planting street trees and creating pollinator-friendly planting. So you can see there's a huge variety of projects going on across Wales. This is just a snapshot, but every one of the LNPs have got their own plan, and they're working on those modest measures that make an impact locally. So for any of you for whom this has whetted your appetite, potentially, you can contact your local nature partnership through the web address that I've identified there. If you're interested in potentially taking a project forward yourself with the National Lottery Heritage Fund and ourselves, those applications are considered on a monthly basis. So although it's November, it's not too late to apply because the funding runs until the end of the next financial year. So that's quite helpful in terms of at this time of the financial year. And of course, with the National Lottery Heritage Fund, we have capital funding in the main, but there is an element of support through the National Lottery as well to fund other costs. And of course, Keep Wells Tidy are there either to look at whether or not you know of a community group that might be interested in the starter or development pack, or potentially to go and have a look at their fantastic interactive map and see what's going on in your local area. As I said, these three organisations are working together. They're supporting each other in helping projects access the most appropriate strand of money. And they're also working together to sit on each other's panels and review projects. So we're beginning to get a body of individuals across Wales who are working together. So this was one of the main aims of Local Places for Nature, as I said, to be a bottom-up programme, so that it wasn't centrally controlled and managed by Welsh Government, but where communities and organisations across Wales would come together to restore and enhance nature. So looking forward, we would like to encourage as many organisations and groups to participate in Local Places for Nature. As you know, through our third sector agreement, we are committed to working with third sector partners, both in terms to increase expertise and support. Chris gave a fantastic presentation about the way the local nature partnership coordinators are taking on a bigger and bigger role in supporting projects, not just that they're undertaking, but that other organisations within their areas are undertaking. And we want to see even more of that next year and hope that that sort of role will be developed. But also in identifying innovative ways in which we can deliver programmes like Local Places for Nature. The Keep Wells Tidy model has not been done before. It's a very interesting model of delivery. Not everybody wants a prepaid package, but for those organisations that are very new to this, don't necessarily have the knowledge and expertise to understand non-native species and peat free compost and all those other things that they need to think about. All of that is done for them, and so they need to just get the volunteers together and to find a place to do it. So that offers some community groups a significant level of assurance, and also they don't have to get involved in procurement and things like that. The National Lottery is a very different innovative way of bringing together different public sector funding models and coming together to support projects jointly. So hopefully we will be able to develop more of that in the future and enable more organisations to get involved in Local Places for Nature. So that's a very quick summary of where we've got to with Local Places for Nature to date. As I said, it's a brand new programme. It's only been running for a year. We've used existing delivery mechanisms as much as possible to try and speed up delivery and also to reduce the administration and overheads within the system. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I'll be available for the Q&A session later if you'd like to ask me any questions. So I'm aware that we're slightly behind time, so hopefully I've caught up a little bit, Kerry.
That was excellent. You got us back on schedule and really great presentation of some really excellent work that's been done through this programme that, as Alison said, was a standing start at the beginning of this year. I'm going to move us on to our next presenter now, which is Catherine Thomas, and Catherine is from the National Botanic Gardens of Wales. So, Catherine, over to you.
Everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Catherine. It's just a little bit quiet.
Okay, is that any better if I hold the mic?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, right, there we go. Right, well, thanks for joining us today on this fine Wednesday afternoon. My name is Catherine Thomas, and I'm the project officer for the project you see in front of you here. So we'll be talking about Biophilic Wales, which is a project based at the National Botanic Garden of Wales. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, I'm going to tell you about the partnership, what this term biophilia means, and especially what it means in today's context as we're going through quite challenging times at the moment. and then what the project will be doing, which is split up into 3 separate work programmes. So we are a 3-year NROL funded project, and that's Welsh Government money, and we're working in partnership with the National Botanic Garden of Wales, Natural Resources Wales, the Swansea Bay University Health Board, and Swansea University. And our overall aim is to increase well-being and protect and enhance our native wildlife in Wales. So, biophilia, what does this term mean? So there's a definition on the screen there. And never before has such a sense of calm and mindfulness that you get from being nature been more important than it is right now. Put simply, people need nature. If you think about holidays and spare time, you might spend time on the countryside, on the coast, your local park, and you're drawn to these places. You might not even know why you do it, but they are good for you. They're good for your soul. They're good for your well-being. And on the other side of the coin, of course, nature needs us as well. From all the experts that are giving talks at this conference to school children, nurturing wildlife on their doorstep, all making a difference. Oh, the irony though, dramatic pause. It's really interesting that as we start to realise just what nature can do, the positive effects on our well-being, we're also starting to realise the damage we've done. During lockdown, everybody was planting. You couldn't get compost for love nor money. It was all sold out. A lot of people I know were finding new walks in local countryside and green spaces. And for those who are lucky enough to have a garden, people spending so much more time in their garden, and it really helped in these difficult times. But we're also seeing it regularly in the news, state of nature reports, and the work of David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg. There's a lot of bad news stories out there as well, I'm afraid. But Biophilic Wales is doing its bit to make Wales a happier nation and make our habitats more biodiverse. And we're doing this with work split into 3 programmes. So we have Inspiring Spaces, Grasslands for Life, and Plants for People. So I'm going to be talking about Inspiring Spaces, which is all to do with our work on the NHS site, the Swansea Bay University Health Board site. We will be improving the green infrastructure, which will then have a knock-on effect to improving the well-being of the people that use these spaces. And that could be anybody from staff, patients, visitors, and the local community. And then I'm going to hand over to Laura Jones, not necessarily in that order though, who's going to talk about our Grasslands for Life, where we're turning the way we look at our grasslands on its head. Sorry. So we're looking at the soil. Instead of looking at what's on the surface, we're looking a bit deeper with DNA metabarcoding. Laura will tell you all about that. It's very scientific. And then Plants for People, which in some respects, I suppose, is a much more simpler concept, but it's lovely in its simplicity. Where we're collecting seeds from rare plants so these species can be preserved to sustain healthy communities in the future. And we do this by seed banking and bulking up. And I'll hand over to Elliot for that one. But for now, I'll tell you a little bit about Inspiring Spaces. So benefiting staff, patients and visitors, like I said, all over the Swansea Bay area. It's quite a big area. So you have a map there, shows you 40 different sites, hospitals, clinics, health centres and learning disability residences. All very different sites, some with lots of green space around them for nature. I don't know if anybody knows Kevin Coyd Hospital, huge amounts of space around there, lots of nice woodland. Whereas some places, they don't even have enough space for you to park, never mind a space for a planter, and we might just be able to fit in a bird box, I don't know. So we've prioritised all these sites to get the most benefit from our interventions, so reaching as many people as we possibly can, and where possible, providing some green infrastructure where there was none before. the Inspiring Spaces targets, so we've got something to aim for here with trees being planted, hedgerows. I was actually planting some hedges at Morriston Hospital yesterday with a group of volunteers, which was great fun. We're also working with the Orchard Project. They have a project manager in Swansea now, so we're working with them. Grassland biodiversity, we're improving these places by changing the management basically, mowing regimes, no-mow areas, just less mowing basically. Adding native plants that support our pollinators as well, bird boxes and bug hotels, relaxation areas. This is a really important one for me because as I was going around the site, I would see staff, NHS staff, sat outside on bollards and street furniture because they had nowhere else to go. And these guys are working so hard at the moment under tremendous stress. Whether you're a surgeon or whether you're a cleaner, it makes a difference. They're having, they've got a lot on their shoulders at the moment. So to be able to provide a green space where people can relax and benefit from nature is really, really important to me. Interpretation as well, explaining the benefits of the work we're doing, especially with the no-mow regimes, and not everybody appreciates perhaps what it's all about, and some people might say, oh, it looks a bit untidy, so we've got some work to do there as well. And better connecting our sites to the health board sites to neighbouring green corridors. Events, it would be nice to be running a few events, hopefully, maybe next year we'll get a lot more done. Anything from like nature ID sessions to improving people's well-being, yoga, art, like wild art, things like that. And then the volunteering side of it, which is a huge part of it's part of the whole project actually, and all 3 work programs use like volunteers. But with the health board sites and inspiring spaces, we have big groups of volunteers here, and those that are regular volunteers will be able to sign up for the Biophilic Wales Skills Development Award, which is, so there's training there, and it fits in really nicely with the Future Generations Act to help provide a happier, healthier, more prosperous Wales. Measuring the success of the Inspiring Spaces work. Obviously, we'll survey everything beforehand and after to show the differences we've made in nature conservation and people's well-being. We're very conscious that there's lots of work out there, and everybody generally knows that being in nature is good for us. But we're looking to collect data which actually scientifically proves it. And obviously, on the nature conservation side of things, which Laura will talk about in a bit, it's fascinating the different techniques you can use to measure the changes that are happening. And finally, one last bit from me. I might have mentioned coronavirus once or twice during this talk. So how do you manage a project like this during a global pandemic? Laura and Elliot have done an amazing job, and obviously with the Grasslands for Life and Plants for People, a lot of their work is outside in the middle of nowhere, basically, in a nature reserve on the top side of a hill. So thankfully that's not been too greatly affected, although some of their lab work has been delayed slightly. So they've caught up really well. But the Inspiring Spaces, which has volunteering at its heart, has suffered a bit. Obviously with lockdowns, we've had no volunteers, or we've had volunteers that can only work in a particular area because they can't cross the borders, all that sort of thing. So we had a bit of a brainstorming session, and I have to give credit to Elliot here where it is due. We came up with a home volunteering opportunity called Join Our Growing Team, which really made the most of a bad situation, to be honest. So people signed up, and we sent out packets of seeds, 6 different species, with instructions on how to grow them. Very simple, obviously, and we encourage them to use peat-free compost, and you could use any containers at home to plant them in, yogurt pots, milk bottles. It didn't matter. It didn't have to be fancy, and it didn't have to cost people anything. And people got really excited about it. And it was a really nice way. One, it fulfilled that need to be out in nature. Like I say, you couldn't get cold frost at the big first lockdown, could you? Because everybody was planting. but also it was a chance for people to say thank you to NHS workers, because we made it clear right from the start, we're going to grow these plants at home, and then when it's safe, we will bring the plants onto the health board site. So people really like the two opportunities there, and especially to say thank you to the NHS. Yeah, and it went rather well. So it was a blooming success, and had over 1,600 volunteers sign up and grow plants for the NHS. Some of those plants have been returned to us now already. We collected some at the Botanic Garden of Wales, and others we are hoping we'll be able to get the people that planted them out onto site, onto the NHS sites themselves, so they can actually see the whole process and they'll be able to plant the plants themselves. So that is about it for me and Inspiring Spaces. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Elliot, and he can tell you a bit more about plants.
Thanks, Catherine. So I'll talk you through the Plants for People part of the Biophilic Wales project. And this is all about celebrating Wales' natural heritage by protecting our most threatened plants for the people of Wales. So we've got a few different parts of the Plants for the People work package. The main part is the seed banking. So in 2018, we established the National Seed Bank of Wales at the Botanic Gardens, and we've been basically filling that with the most threatened plants in Wales over the last couple of years. Another part of the project is providing seed, Welsh provenance seed of grassland species for restoration and creation projects. We want to contribute to in situ and ex situ conservation. I want to work with community of volunteer groups with the health board and beyond to grow Wales's threatened plants. So the National Seed Bank of Wales. So recent global estimates that up to 40% of plant species are threatened with extinction, which obviously is a very terrifying statistic, nearly half. And one way of protecting those plants is through seed banking. So seed banking stores the seeds long term. It's sort of an insurance policy, and you can use those seeds at a later date to avert plant extinctions. I expect most of you have heard of Kew's Millennium Seed Bank, which has collected seeds from nearly all the UK flora. So they've pretty much got seeds from every species in the country, basically. But 75% of those are not for Welsh provenance populations. So that's quite an important point, is that they might have every seeds from every species, but they might not be from Welsh sources. And our project is looking to increase the number of Welsh provenance seeds that are safely seed banked. So that's to safeguard their genetic diversity. So seeds from Scotland or Norfolk aren't going to be the same as seeds from Wales, even if they're the same species. And it also means that if there's any restoration projects in Wales or any projects looking to save a species, that at least they can get Welsh provenance seeds. So Dr. Kevin McGinn from the Growing the Future project attended a 3-week seed conservation course at the Millennium Seed Bank. And since then, he's been working to increase the capacity of the seed bank. So we've got a lot of new equipment. There's things like freezers, sieves for cleaning seeds, loads of stuff that you need to get in place before you can start collecting lots of different species. So the species we've collected so far, bearing in mind that it's only been a couple of years and last summer was basically unavailable for fieldwork, we've collected quite a lot so far already. So we did a collection in the Great Orme with the joint collection with Millennium Seed Bank. So we went with Seth and Jenny from the Millennium Seed Bank to the Great Orme, and we collected wild Cotoneaster. It's the endemic Cotoneaster to the Great Orme. It's not found anywhere else in, I think it was down to 6 different bushes a few years ago. So we collected some seeds from that. And I went with Kevin McGinn in 2019 to collect Goldilocks Aster, was a great one as well. This year it was a bit of a truncated fieldwork season, so we weren't really able to do that much until September. But even in a month, we collected some really important species. So this is corky-fruited water dropwood, which is found on the Gwent levels. And Kevin went to collect red hemp nettle from, I think it was on the Shingle Beach in the Gower. So these are species that are really, really, on their last legs in terms of population-wise. So it's vital we collect them, because the red hemp nettles on a Shingle Beach on the Gower, which any particularly bad storm or something could really, really impact. And as well as the threatened species, we're also collecting seeds from sort of the key grassland species. So these are things that are common or declining, but haven't been collected from Welsh populations before. At the moment, we've got up to over 40 different species, a lot of them collected from the Wine Lass Reserve at the National Botanic Garden of Wales, including this greater butterfly orchid. But this year we're looking to expand that and go different parts of Wales, so from like west to east, north to south, really start collecting a lot of different populations. As a sort of adjunct to our collection, we've also been working this year on collecting wildflower seeds to make it available to the public. So we've been selling our Saving Pollinators wildflower seeds. So we have been brush harvesting and collecting individual species which are available to buy from the National Botanic Garden of Wales website. And that's because there's really very few sources of Welsh provenance seed. So I think there's Windrush in Pembrokeshire, there's Celtic wildflowers and Welsh organic wildflowers that sell plug plants. But outside of that, it's very, very difficult to get wildflower seeds that are from Wales. So we've been working this year to just provide a bit of choice, really. So we've been selling a wildflower mix from the Wine Lass Reserve and individual species such as yellow rattle. And they've been really popular, been really selling well, which shows there's a lot of market for Welsh wildflower seeds. We also work for in situ conservation. So our collection of Goldilocks Aster, which me and Kevin McGinn collected in September last year, has some of those seeds have been sent to Cumbria. The Cumbrian population of Goldilocks Aster went extinct, so they asked us for seeds as the closest seed source to repopulate the area, which we were really thrilled about. Another project we've worked on is meadow claria, Salvia protensis. In 2016, I think it went extinct in the single Monmouthshire population, which is the only population in Wales. We helped to reintroduce the species there, and currently working on a new flora which will be published after Christmas. Ex situ conservation. So the National Botanic Garden of Wales is obviously we're lucky that we've got the space and time to be able to do ex situ conservation. So we've got the Conserving Welsh Plant Zone, which many of our seed collection species you can find in the Welsh Plant Zone. We've got the British Whitebeam Grove, and we've also got the capacity to bulk up some of the seed stocks. So some of the collections we've made, we can bulk them up, increase the number of seeds we've got, and then we can distribute those to conservation projects. During lockdown, it was sort of fairly difficult to think of ways we could engage with the projects, but we were producing monthly wildflower guides, which proved really popular. I think they were the most downloaded and visited things on the National Garden website during the lockdown, which was really nice. Not that they couldn't visit, so it was a good way to reach a lot of people. And the future for Plants for People is obviously keep collecting the seeds. This year especially, well 2021, this is going to be a big push on this. But also we want to be able to connect different parts of the Biophilic Wales project. We want to be able to use our collections to engage the public, so we're going to try and grow some of the threatened species on our health board sites that Catherine was talking about. And we also want to expand the amount and diversity of Welsh provenance seed available to the public. So that's it from Plants for People.
Hello, so I'm Laura Jones. I work at the National Botanic Garden as Science Officer, and for the Biophilic Wales project, I contribute to the Grasslands for Life bit of it, which I'm going to give a brief overview now. The Grasslands for Life, like Catherine mentioned, the idea behind that and the kind of aim of that is using DNA techniques to monitor grasslands within Wales. And to give a little bit of context to that work, so the Botanic Garden, a lot of our research output is related to using DNA for different things. We've been DNA barcoding since 2008, roughly, and using DNA to investigate sort of rare Welsh plants. Myself, I completed my PhD at the Botanic Garden looking at honey. So identifying the plants in the honey using DNA. And the same kind of principles work here, except instead of honey, we're using soil, so collecting soil from these grasslands to not only just identify plants, but other measures of biodiversity as well. So animals, invertebrates, things like that, fungi and microbial communities which are present in the environmental DNA within the soil. So the fieldwork for that we completed last winter. We went out and collected from 82 transects. We did 20-metre soil sampling transects, and those were mostly focused on national nature reserve sites throughout Wales, so north to south. And we did a winter collection and a summer collection, so we can compare between what sort of biodiversity we can detect. One of the things that with the DNA is that hopefully we can detect more biodiversity than you would with traditional monitoring techniques. With vegetation surveys, there may be things present earlier in the season that are missed. Things like fungi are another example where unless you can see the fruiting bodies, it's often hard to know if they're maybe present in the soil. That's one of the things that we're keen to look at. So we did the National Nature Reserve sites with kind of the key grassland communities throughout Wales, but we also did colliery spoil sites as well. We went to 10 different colliery spoil sites where these kind of brownfield areas are holding biodiversity within them, and we were also interested in kind of comparing that with more traditionally known kind of sites of conservation. And then to kind of tie into the Inspiring Spaces work, we also sampled from health board sites. So these are often very lone grasslands, but we were keen to get a kind of baseline measure of maybe the biodiversity that's held within those sites. So we can look at the interventions potentially, see how we might be improving biodiversity on those sites by the work that Catherine's doing with her volunteers. In the summer as well, we completed vegetation survey, so we've got that to compare to, and we've also got the MBC sort of community info historically that's been recorded on a lot of the nature reserve sites to compare to too. And what I would say about this as well, with Catherine mentioning, how volunteers are such an important part of the scheme, and upskilling volunteers as well, and letting people kind of develop new skills. This is kind of a key aspect for our student researchers and our undergraduate placement students to join in on, so they can gain field skills, plant ID skills, and field sampling methods as well. So we were really lucky that we had students joined us in the winter sampling. We were a bit more of a restricted team in the summer, but a couple of volunteers joined us on a couple of the plots and things, and that was really helpful and really good for them to develop skills, especially at the moment where it's even more difficult to get access to field work. To go a little bit more into kind of the DNA barcoding sort of technique. So once we've extracted the DNA and done all of our amplification and things, we'll have a lot of sequences present that we don't know the identification on. So the really key thing of DNA metabarcoding is having a reference library that you can compare to. And we have that for the plants. So with the reference library, the National Botanic Garden was the first, made Wales the first country in the world to DNA barcode all of its native flora. So we got all of the plants with RBCL and ITS2 and MAC-K, another marker, all barcoded and attached to a sort of herbarium specimen, so we know these are really reliable identifications. For the other groups, we're not the only ones sort of DNA barcoding. It's a kind of worldwide endeavour by lots of different research groups across the globe. But all of that data, including ours, gets uploaded to a central repository called Barcode of Life, so researchers everywhere can access it. So we'll be using that to look at the other groups. And some of the kind of initial questions that we're probably going to look at, we're really keen to sort of characterise that biodiversity. So looking at just the levels of biodiversity, what taxa we can identify, what taxa we can find within those sites, and then comparing it with the site data that we have. We also did separate soil collections to look at different kind of soil metrics and send those away for analysis. And also then the traditional kind of MVC designations for those sites as well. And then how can we potentially use this practically as an additional monitoring technique for these grasslands? What more information does it provide us with? How practical it is to do and how cost effective it is to have as another monitoring method. And then continuing that, can we inform then future management of these grasslands? Are there particular things that we can kind of connect with these metrics to be able to sort of offer advice and on-the-ground management for those sites, which would be interesting also to compare with like the health board things as well. So yeah, it's a very brief overview of the sort of this aspect. We're really lucky to be able to do all of the collections, especially this summer. So I'm really pleased that we've got all of these soil samples. And yeah, we'll be progressing through the lab work now and getting the results through, hopefully. So thanks very much for listening to our talk. And I think we're going to have a question and answer session now.
Thank you very much, Laura, Elliot and Catherine for that fascinating presentation on the work there. I think we have now switched to the panel mode so everyone can see the panel. And we've had a few questions coming in from our audience, particularly around sort of how you undertake your work within this project. So Ashlyn has asked how sites are identified for collection, and who you work with in doing that. So I was wondering if one of you would like to perhaps fill us in on a bit more of the detail of that.
Yeah, so that's a lot of, for the seed collection, that's a lot of hard work is identifying a good population that's a healthy population, because there's no point collecting seeds which aren't going to be viable. If they're not going to grow, then they're sort of kind of useless. But that's a lot of the challenge. We can only collect up to 20% of the seeds that are available when you collect on a certain day, and that's to ensure the original population isn't depleted too much. So that's a really hard task, because you know we've got certain knowledge at the Botanic Gardens, but we don't have on the ground knowledge in every part of Wales, so that's quite hard to figure that out. So we're so reliant on local experts, just a lifesaver. So we work really closely with NRW, particularly Julian Woodman from NRW, who's a vascular plant specialist. He's been amazing identifying populations. Barry Stewart from Celtic Wildflowers, he's been great at the South Wales sites in particular. So yeah, it's all based on the local knowledge of sort of the SBI recordings and that. So if anyone's got a plant they want some seeds collected from, get in touch.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And sort of linked into this, you obviously connecting to a lot of people across Wales and getting more people to have that. David's asked Laura whether the project includes any DNA training for volunteers, and I wondered if you could just say a bit more around that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's been a little bit more limited with COVID, but yeah, especially for our kind of undergraduate placement students and our undergraduate kind of volunteers from universities, then we like to try and let them into the lab and give them kind of an opportunity to shadow and see the different stages of the lab work, so they get to start having more experience in that, because that's another thing that's also really difficult sometimes to get access to and access to experience. So currently, hopefully today as well, they're currently working on processing through some of these soil samples for me, so they're getting experience in it.
The questions popping up from a few people on different areas now, and one of the questions that I can see is just coming in is around, does the Botanic Garden have any conservation actions for non-seed plants? So what are your plans in that area? I'm not sure who would be best placed to pick that up, but I just wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm not sure that we do, actually. I think with the seed bank, that's taken the focus for the last couple of years, I think. But we'd definitely like to.
The question, I suppose it's a question of trying to do these projects one after the other and the resources to do the different types. But there's the interest to do what can be done. And are arable plants included? Someone else has asked as well.
Yeah. They're a particular focus for seed collection because they're so transient and really, really threatened. So we've collected corn buttercup, Ranunculus savensis, which is really basically gone from Wales. So any arable plants, yeah, we're really, really interested.
I'm muting myself there. Well, thank you. I think that covers most of the questions we've got coming in. There's one question I see that we haven't picked up that's asked whether the National Botanic Gardens will be interested in accepting seeds from individuals from local patches, and if so, is there a right method of collection? What is the position on that sort of approach?
We haven't so far. Mostly because we've already been set up. The seed bank's only been set up for a couple of years. You need to be quite careful. One, in terms of permissions, so you need to have the landowner permission, and you need to, if it's a triple SI, you need permissions for that. If it's a Schedule 8 plant species, you need permissions from that from Natural Resource Wales. We haven't yet, but I think we could do in the future.
Thank you for that. There's been some fascinating presentations, some interesting questions coming through. I'm just going to give one last call to our audience. If anyone's got any other questions they would like to pose to any of our panel members. I think we've picked up all the questions that I can see coming in.
I think just to add to what Elliot was saying as well, if anybody was to think, oh, we've got some nice rare plants here, we're going to collect the seeds, did make the point that, you could only collect a small percentage of what's there. So you've got to be really, really careful. So you might think, I'm doing you a big favour. Here you go. We're like, oh my God, the local population is going to, oh dear. So, yeah, so you've got to know what you're doing and it's best to seek advice before you think, I can help out with that.
That's good advice. Don't go strip all the seeds out of your local patch entirely.
If you've got a population you think you'd like to collect, it would be good to collect seed from, probably get in touch with us or the Millennium Seed Bank, and then we can sort of go from there, I think.
That's the message, to get in touch and make sure we do it right, rather than risking any harm. One last question that's just been flagged I missed is, were there any plans to cover more MVC grassland categories?
So yeah, we haven't got any specific plans, but this is a kind of exercise in, is this, something helpful for monitoring? We did kind of common MVC communities across Wales, ones that we knew we'd be able to get kind of samples from across, and then some, the interesting like M24, nice marshy grassland kind of sites as well, Ross pasture kind of ones. So yeah, we'll have to kind of assess that and those results, and then see how applicable it is to kind of try and get other NBC communities, because that would be really interesting.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think that's sort of wrapping up on our questions there. So I think all it leaves for me to do is really thank all our presenters for coming in, Alison, Laura, Elliot, Catherine. Thank you to all of you. There were some really interesting presentations there. It really struck me how much has still gone on this year in quite difficult circumstances. We saw some community groups still managing to do work out in the field in different ways, and the ways we've managed to engage with people even in these difficult circumstances. As you said, it's been really a year when everyone wants to engage with nature. Hopefully we can continue that momentum as we come out of the current times, and have people seeing a more in-depth appreciation of just what's around them, and really how precious some of the species we have in Wales are, and the need to protect them. Yeah, so thank you to everyone who's joined us today. For everyone who's listened in, thank you for joining us. And just a quick reminder, there's lots more information about the conference on the Hoover platform. Please do go over there and provide your feedback. There's some link sessions buttons that we can use then, obviously, to understand what worked well, what didn't, for future years. Please do go and leave your feedback. And just to point to the next sessions, there are some sessions this afternoon around behavioural change. So I'm sure some of you will be signed up in there, and we look forward to seeing you in those later sessions. So thanks for everyone for joining us. Bye for the panel.
Well done, everyone.
Thank